Happy New Year. So I was thinking about what are we talking about tonight, and I've come across many people in the last few days that seem to be annoyed for no reason at all. When we feel annoyed, look at the cause, for it always comes from ourselves. That's usually the case. And conversely, I also have run into a number of people who are just blissfully in love with what their life is, what they're doing, who they're with. They're just taking every second and enjoying it. And then I saw a movie today called, it's a story about Dick Cheney, Vice. And it kind of showed, it was a very good movie. I really liked it. Everybody was really great acting, great writing. It was written and directed by the same person. And again, it was a perfect example of a collaborative effort, right? And what I really liked about it was very historically precedent. And it was not... hey there, S2. Happy New Year. It wasn't, it was what happened as close to the facts, right? And of course, the movie had the writer and directors and everyone who was involved, their little, essence. So, S2, did you see the movie about Dick Cheney called Vice? And S2, are you a fan of movies, or like I'm a movie guy? No, I'm a movie guy who I see a movie and I see the essence of what happened in that history. Like there's a great movie called The Gangs of New York. Really kind of tells what was going on during the Civil War in New York City. The Irish were just pouring off the boats. Yeah, I don't watch TV either. But I do, get the DVDs from the library, and I do kind of go to the movies maybe once a month. I have a friend who likes to go to the movies, so he's, we're two old farts, so we go to the movies. Old fart day. And instead of spending $12 or $8 or $9, we spend about $6. And I can afford that for a little bit of entertainment. But anyway, so Esther, what's your favorite movie? What movie kind of is a touchstone for you? That goes, whoa, or kind of, rocked you in a way. Like I saw a movie called Zardos years ago with Sean Connery. And Zardos is Wizard of Oz spelled backwards. And the guy who wrote Wizard of Oz was an economist. And he couldn't just come out and, sci-fi. Just couldn't come out and say it. And sci-fi is really great because it can talk about things that most movies can't, like Blade Runner. That is a great movie because it really, here are these clones who are treated like property, and who says they don't have a soul? They sure act like they do, and they want to live more than their, corporate masters have designed them to live. And so that's, the interesting thing is art always gives a reflection of what's going on. Yep, movies that expand reality. Yep. And not, like the Star Wars one. I mean, they have an interesting little thing because George Lucas sat at the feet of Joseph Campbell and took notes, and all this, Joseph Campbell being the griot he was, told Lucas the whole story of the universe, and that was the Star Wars storyline. The Death Star. Our moon is a freaking Death Star. Right? The what all the rubble in the Oort belt was the major planet between Earth, Mars, and the Sun, and for some reason it blew up, just like the planet blew up in Superman, right? So there are all of these films and comic books and things, and they're like our mythology, you know. So as we enter into 2019, after 18 was like, whoa, baby, but not really, because what we've have experienced has been more or less a comic book, and it's more, Donnie Chump thinks he's on the set of The Apprentice, and this is all some kind of distraction from whatever is going on. And I still haven't quite figured what's going on because there's so many backstories. Who knows what's going on, right? So, any of you three have any ideas of what's going on? What we're being, because basically, our history has been a continuation of the powers that shouldn't be, the hidden hand, always manipulating the sheeple through the mechanism of problem, action, solution, right? And every war is that. There's never a reason to have a war. This movie Vice about Dick Cheney really shows, there was no reason, for 9/11, no reason for the war in the Mideast, except for guys who wanted to make a lot of money, and the public is so easily manipulated. So the last scene in this, they show how the folks who are, basically behind, the neocons who are behind this whole, branding and realigning the world view by 9/11 and then wars in, the Mideast, you know, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, then Iran. They definitely want war in Iran. And, again, including Israel and Saudi Arabia. So, I mean, we really don't know what this rebranding, this relocation of the body politic is all about. But what does your intuition tell you? Because, I was thinking about, okay, so what am I supposed to be doing tonight? What are the ideas? So I went into state and I meditated. And what I got were, trust your intuition, settle it soon, laugh about it. What is my most important action? Collaboration will be the key. Investigate and then enjoy it. And what else did I have here? Reconciliation. Reconsider one's approach. Don't waste time. If you don't, your results will be righteous. Those are the things that popped out of my head. Oh, I like that. We're living in a common echo. Bob, what do you make of sentences that follow you, but you don't know the meaning of them? Hey, Jennifer K. Jennifer, have you been watching what S2 has been postulating on the chat? This one is interesting. What do you make of sentences that follow you, but you don't know the meaning of them? S2, kind of be, I don't know, understand. Sentences like literary sentences, like the cat ran up the hill, or, sentences like, you get a sentence from the judge. What are we talking about here? Circadian temporal moon. As to you keep, words and sentences. Well, I try to be as clear as I can, but that's something that's, I try to be real specific, use the clearest words, and people just, take what I say and twist it around and meaning something else, or basically what I sense that people do. And I do this. I can only say people. I sense people do this because I do this sometimes. I hear something, and because I'm thinking of something else, that's what I think I heard. Is that what you're talking about, S2? Oh, it's 12:21. Thought forms. Well, that's interesting because I've been, synchronistically, if you go back and watch these last 10 or so chats, it's amazing. Pretty much everything's synchronistic. And, I kind of prattle on here and I stroll through the Griot storyline. And you guys are, texting over there. And that you also kind of talk to each other off the chat. So I don't see that, don't understand that. And then you come back with having that little discussion with somebody else, and then you put something on the chat, and it's like, so you almost have to be psychic to understand what's going on. And that's the amazingness of this chat, is that as I've gotten to know you folks, my adepts, and like I said, I don't know your ages, I don't know where you are, I don't even know your genders, but I'm starting to understand your conscious, because when we go into state, I can sense your conscious, and the more we do this, the more we are part of the great link in a conscious way, right? Like Buddha. So we are really tiptoeing into uncharted territories here within the context of community, because back in the day, like where I grew up as a kid, everybody knew everybody. Everybody's grandma was hanging out the window. If you did something wrong, stop that! I'm going to tell your grandma. By the time you got home, your grandma knew, and that was a community. Then when I lived with indigenous tribal folk around the planet, the more indigenous they were. I mean, I ran into folk in the deep woods of Brazil that were wearing "I Love New York" T-shirts, and the New York Giants baseball cap, and and flip-flops, And yes, they were definitely indigenous folk, but they had been touched by materialism, just like that photo I keep showing you of the tribe I stayed with in Australia. They were wearing cowboy outfits, and yet they were in dream time all the time, And they had contacted me a number of times before I even knew I was coming to Australia. They connected me in that bathroom at flight 07, flying from Honolulu to Sydney. So it's it's quite interesting what's going on. That we're experiencing things, and the powers that shouldn't be doing their best to basically give us an augment, augmented reality through a digital device. And soon we're going to have glasses that we're going to see. Instead of wearing those big heavy goggles, for virtual reality, we'll just have regular. Or I think you have to have glasses because you need a space between the projector and your retinal nerve. But maybe they'll get to the point where they can give you contact lenses, and you'll have you know augmented reality. So we're it's like a race. We're on a race between becoming that savage that Huxley talked about in Brave New World, or becoming the automatons that were just whacked out on Soma, right? So, what are your impressions? You four there, or three. Let's hear some little feedback from you guys, your experiences. I mean, I am experiencing your consciousness. You guys are not the average meat puppets. You definitely have a handle on a kind of understanding that something else is going on, and you want to step up to your higher conscious. That's why you're here. And so, what do you think? Let's get some feedback. And I'm wanting more and more feedback from you, because as your sensei, I need to hear from my adepts. I need to hear from you. And not just ask me questions. Has been there maybe 15 years, and it seems. Let's see, what's this? Images and words. Sentence has been there for maybe 15 years, and it seems important, but I don't know why. What's the sentence? This reality seems like a dream. Exactly, because it's being augmented by an illusion, you know. And what happened 15 years ago that kind of, woke you up, you know. Usually it's a trauma of some sort. Okay, temple moon. Can you enlighten me as to on what that is? The Arcadian temple moon. Because, you say something, and it's like not, I don't kind of find it in the Rolodex up here. A clairvoyant woman. Okay. That's always a good, wake you up. And what did the clairvoyant woman say about the temple moon? So anyone of the seven have any input to S2? I don't know what it means, but maybe it's yep, yep, yep. Okay, there you go. I can grok that. Hey there, Jane, Uncle Fugnuts. We're getting into some deep theology here, kind of thumb back on what S2 has been saying here. Well, that's a great, research. That is, the best thing you can do for 2019. And all of us need to do exactly that, and especially, work on our heart chakra, ours, in that reflective mirror, um, that so we can put that light into our own heart, because we have to forgive ourselves. We have to heal that heart of our own. Why do people do drugs, overeat, sex out, do all those things? It's because they have a hole in their heart. Before you let, you got to let yourself in, right? And that's, I'm on, chat, off, and on. It's okay, you know? We do it as we do it. This is best we can, right? And if you just want to hang and listen and then throw a few things in when it's right. Like I earlier, was thinking, I did the morning wrap and had kind of a thought strand in that. And then I meditated there and I just let things come into my head. And that's why I always carry a, composition book, and I wrote down the things that popped in my head. Oh yeah, I lived before, as I think I've said more than once. Uh, yep. Um, have you guys ever heard Elton John's record "Man, Man Across the Water"? And there's a song called "Indian Sunset." Every time I play that, I go straight to Lakota. I mean, I was a Lakota, I don't know how many stories back I told the story of the Lakota tale of the all-consuming monster, and our hero was Corn, and his beloved was Plum, and this Lakota tale. It's not just Lakota tale. It's pretty much across the all our relations, collective consciousness of the indigenous folk of North America, up into Canada and kind of down into Mexico. South America a little different, but pretty much the East Coast, Florida, Plains, and West. But it's a Lakota tale of before the white man really showed up, and they kind of knew, they energetically got it, and the monster that creeped into their land before the white guy showed up, was this monster of ravenous consumption, taking everything and not leaving anything. So, Ferry, what is the advice? I have some advice for that. What is the advice? And Corn and Plum were married, and on their honeymoon, they were in a hogan off from the tribe, and then this great storm blew in, and everyone's screaming and crying, and this great so they could hardly get out of the hogan, but Corn went to see what was wrong, because he was a hunter, and he's there to protect the tribe. He's a young man, and but not a young man, but 20 something, or maybe mid 20s, and he goes to there, and there's a gigantic monster eating, popping the women into its mouth and killing everyone and burning and leaving the place totally decimated. Very much what the when the blue coach came, that's what they did. Right. Like I said, this tale is in a lot of, I've heard it from many folk. And they go and, you can't beat this monster. It's like, 60 feet high, and just pops people in its mouth. And Corn and another young warrior run after it. They don't want to lose the trail, because, all these women have been popped into this monster's mouth. And they basically run and run and run and run and run, and it's hard not to, you can't miss it. The smell is unbelievable and has gigantic footprints. It's pretty hard to miss. That love exists in make a loving act or something. Yep, yep, exactly. The concept of, if I want to be happy, I need to make the other happy, and when they're happy, that makes me happy. When people go, why should I do that? I'm not going to get any money for that. You're just so annoying. No. If you don't want any of that kind of feeling, you make the other person happy. That will make you happy. And that's what I do every day. I run into 20, 10, 4 people who I have no idea who they are, but I can tell energetically. They need to tell their story. Hey, so how you doing? What's up? It is fun. Yes, it is fun. Laws of attraction, right? Yep, it works. Yep. Yes, I was in the brownies. My mother was a brownie leader for my sister, and I was a little guy, so I was a brownie. And then, when I was 16, 17, I was trying to make get some street cred, so I wouldn't get drafted for Vietnam. And I worked for the Boys Athletic League, and I helped run a camp for kids from New York City in the ghettos, and we took them up to Bear Mountain. And this was right after Martin Luther King got killed and X got killed, and so there was a lot of tension. So they tried to get as many kids out of the city, and so and there was this camp. We were dropped right in the middle of it, and there was 12 of us, and we had none of us. We were all draft dodgers basically, and we weren't from the you know boys athletic league. We had been campers and then counselors, and the guy who was our director, he was our age, but he had been in the system, and so and he kept talking about, if you find anyone masturbating, it's like, what? We were all white. We wanted to know how to deal with black and Hispanic kids. We were looking at the cultural dynamic. That Anyway, long story short, the kids show up and they give us the oldest boys first, like 16-year-olds, and they all had zip guns and chains and knives. And there were 340 of them, and 12 of us, and they beat the crap out of us and ran us out of camp. And then the guy took one of the little boys that he knew and took the all the money from the safe and the camp vehicle and drove away with it, leaving us like. And the administration of the boys like, well, didn't want to. We didn't exist. It's like, you're on your own. And so we went back there, and we were chased out of camp, and we were down in the Peter Pan diner, and this highway patrol guy came, and because we all had long hair, we all looked definitely uber hippie, and so he was just laughing, and he goes, "Yeah, yeah, we heard you got ran out by the kids. I mean, they're going nuts up there," and and I said, "So you don't go in there?" Yeah, we're New York State troopers. That's the Forest Service land, and up there, it's on this line between West Point owns it, meaning the Defense Department, or New York State owns it because they own Bear Mountain, or the Federal Forest Service. So no one wants to touch that with a 10-foot pole. And there was one of us who had some street, this guy named Eddie who came from Chicago, and he was Palestinian. So he was as close to black as any of us were. And so he said, I think if we go up there and try and scam these kids with a nudge and a wink, I think we might be able to get control. So we said, okay, give it a try. So this guy gets on his radio and he calls 2 of his buddies, and we go up there in 3 state trooper cars with the lights blaring and the woo, woo, woo. And we drive into the thing, and all the kids are there, and they're like, and they look like something out of cross between Peter Pan, Animal Farm, and Island of the Insects, or whatever that was called. And so so Eddie gets up and says, "Listen, the state troopers and the National Guard are coming, and the buses are coming, and we're going to put you all on the thing and back to stinky New York." Or you can cool your jets. We can all just have a good time, and you guys are in charge. We're not going to tell you what to do. You want to do anything? Not a problem. We're like your valets. Whatever you want to do, not a problem. And that was enough of a scam, and those kids were like going, yeah, the buses aren't coming. But there were three state troopers there with the lights blaring, and they were trying to look as authoritarian as they could without laughing. And so the guy said, okay. So the cops left. We basically, me and two other guys who knew how to cook because the cook had left too, and he was terrible anyway. And so we took whatever we could make and make something really nice, and we did. And we all ate, and then we made a big bonfire of all the stuff that they smashed up and destroyed. We kind of pulled it all into the middle of this meadow and set it on fire. And that became one of the things we loved best because one reason why this was a crappy World War One training thing for West Point, and nobody had been there, and the federal government gave the boy, oh, go ahead, use that, and it was a piece of shit. And so that was like let's say a Wednesday. So we made it a tradition. Every week we would drag one of the stinky buildings, and where we set the first fire, we nearly burned the whole forest down. So we said, oh, we shouldn't do that again. So we made, there were these, 55-gallon drums. So we made rafts and piled it high with crappy, buildings stuff. And we would take it out in the middle of the lake and set it on fire. Because if we set it on fire in the middle of the lake, it's not going to burn the forest down. So we'd have these gigantic fires out in the middle of the lake. So we would do stuff like that. And as we destroyed the camp and burnt it down in the middle of the lake, we had less and less places to stay, but nobody wanted to stay in any of those crappy places. So there were a number of not pump tents, teepees, right? And so we decided that we would break up in tribes. And we went off into the woods and found nice places and put the teepee up and put tarps up, and we slept under that. And instead of having the meals done everyone kind of, we split up the food. Everyone made whatever the heck they wanted, got up whenever the heck they wanted, did whatever the heck they wanted. And it was amazing because it was this amazing essence. And that's really where I got this thing of collaboration, right? And so after about the third week, they were going to be there 5 weeks, and there were going to be 4 groups, 5 weeks each. And you would pick one, one camper to stay there for the next, and they'd be a senior camper, in training to be a counselor. Anyway, so we decided that we were going to have everybody, all 300 and whatever of those kids, to be that one camper. So they could spend the next 5 weeks there because, by the third or fourth week, everyone was having a great time. It was just an amazing experience, right? So we did that. And so the next group come and they were like 10, right? And by that time, we figured out, we would take these kids because these kids, they were newbies. Not many of them had ever gone camping, right? And so we found these really nice spots on this mountain right next to Bear Mountain. And there was a trail that went from our camp all the way up there. And it was a good 12, 15-mile hike up a hill. I mean, it wasn't like climbing a mountain. There was a path. It wasn't that, But for kids who never did anything like that, and they got there around 3, and we said, okay, drop all your stuff here. We're going to take a little hike. And so we'd hike these kids up. And the different tribes, this was almost like Harry Potter, the different tribes would have different spots. And, we count them off, and then you go with that guy, you go with that guy, you go with that guy. And they would hike and hike and hike. And these kids would see things like raccoons. And I remember I'm with this kid, and it's starting to get dusky-ish. It's about 6 o'clock. We're still, and they get, I'm tired. We had water, but we had no food for them. just water. I'm tired. Oh, what? Hey, you know what? The bears, they call this Bear Mountain. Oh, oh, oh. Yeah, so we're going along, and this kid screams, and what's the matter? What's the matter? And there's a raccoon that kind of just ambling. He goes, look at that rat! I've never seen a rat like so big. Oh my God, it's gonna kill us! I said, no. And all the kids, no, no, guys, that's a raccoon. Relax, relax. Uh, so, uh, mm, dib, 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 dab, dab, dab. Yeah. Aye, sir. Okay, so and now it's dark and the moon is full, and that's why we did this. The moon was full, so you could see yourself hiking. And so we come over this rise, and there's a big fire, and there's 5 or 6 of the camp guys from the older guys, and they're made up like Indians. They got war paint on, they got feathers, they just have little loincloths, right, and their bare feet. And we decided to take all our clothes off and just wear loincloths and feathers and bare feet, and just instead of being black or Hispanic or Irish or knuckleheads like the 12 of us, we were going to be Indians, and it really worked out. And the little kids got up. Oh my God! And then but those guys had cheeseburgers and s'mores, and bug juice, and a big fire, and sleeping bags for all the kids, right? And lots of water, and just and slit trench, and this is how you poop in the forest, and this is what you do, and they got the 411 on the forest, and we took 5 weeks figuring out what the forest was. Yep. And it was one of the best summers I ever freaking have. And like I said, the powers that be didn't want anything to do with us. And because the guy who ran off with the car and the money and the kid, I mean, they didn't want to touch us. So nobody came around. Oh, you can't do it that way. And we just so so first we had 300, then we had 600, then we had 900. At the end of summer, we had 1,200 kids up there. And that's when, like, all these people from NYU and Columbia who were sociologists, and they had to, how are they doing this? This is, and we kind of, the Forest Service were coming, and what was really nice was the state troopers were really nice guys, and they just kept bringing us stuff. And people would come, and just we became like a tourist attraction. And towards the middle of the third trip, we put together a carnival of Indian acts, juggling and you know doing Indian stuff. And we had this horse made out of tires, and you kind of got on it, and it was on ropes, and you kind of pulled the ropes, and you bounced around, and we had these big bonfires in the middle of the lake. By the end of the summer, that World War I camp, there wasn't a stick left. I mean, the main like dining hall, we didn't tear that down, because that was the only space that if we had a really bad storm, that was the only place we could put everyone under a big roof. And it had a pretty nice kitchen. So every now and then when the uh, troopers brought us, they used to bring us some, like half a cow all cut up, and we'd have steaks and pork chops and stuff like that. Um, so that was that summer adventure, and that's where I learned how to camp. And then the rainbow gatherings kind of made me a much better camper, and I did that for a number of years. And I gave the story about my friend, who I talked to today, Garrick Beck. His parents started the Living Theater, Julian Beck and Judith Molina. And Garrick, to outdo his parents in being bohemian, started the Rainbow Gathering, meaning that's the Rainbow Law. I mean, Garrick didn't start it. A lot of people started it. That's the Rainbow Way. Not just one person. All together now. And that's so for years. Oh, you got to come to this thing. It's really great. I said, well, no, I don't do that. It's But a friend of ours, Joni Freedom, got smudged, and I been pressed into service to be her shamanic healer. And so I went out to where she was out there in the West, and got her out of the hospital and got her, kind of healed. And she wanted me to, she loved the way I rubbed her feet and la di da da. And so, I ended up being talked into going to the Pennsylvania gathering because rainbow gatherings are done in different states every year. And it keeps the federales guessing, right? And there are no real leaders, so they can't just, I mean, there are, there's people like Garrick, and there are a number of folks. And if you go to my xratted.blogspot.com, the first story, that's, it's called X-rated, the first story, the first cut, it starts out with me next to death on the mountaintop up here at the school, and I'm snowed in, and, and I'm going, oh my God, love the family. Yep. And so, Jamie, did you ever go to a rainbow gathering? Anyway, that story starts out with that and kind of a little thumbnail of about maybe 10 or 15 pages of who and what, Sensei Al Bob is. And then I go straight into a rainbow gathering, the one that was in Tennessee in 2012. And that's, I was still working pretty hard and heavy for the desperate lawyers and had a good chunk of change and was living the life of, swimming in the swimming pool of chocolate mousse. And, I was like, close to 480 pounds. And I was sick, but I was ignoring the fact that I was sick, right? And going to that rainbow gathering to get myself well, every element of what finally went wrong with me that nearly killed me kind of came out. Like my legs went nuts and my feet just, the skin just came off and all, from my calves to my toes, I was a, bloody mess. I looked like I had leprosy. And I was like, And when I got there, everyone expected me to be Al, to, run, do this, do that. And I could barely walk. And so my two sisters who put that gathering together, they took me up to their little healing camp and set a little, they had already knew I was, they knew that I was going to come. So they had a nice little spot picked out for me, and I put my healing temple there, but, I was healing myself. I really couldn't walk anywhere. And so, my buddies from Com came over and left me all the, medical, gauze and, salves and all the things I needed to, stay whatever was wrong. And so I did, and I, got into doing my healing temple thing, which healed me because I was helping others, right? But rainbow gatherings went from being really these healing things back in the 70s when they started. What it was they kind of have this thing called Thanksgiving Council, and they would decide there'd be a council after the 4th of July, right? And they consensus what's the next state. And there would be people who would be lobbying for it. Oh, let's do it in New England. Let's do it in the West. Let's do it here. Let's do it there. And then those people would be the scouts to find the spot. And then Thanksgiving Council, everyone would gather wherever that was, and they'd consensus on where to look, and then we'd pick 2 or 3 sites out of all the ones that the scouts had, and then a few people who would want to would join the scouts, and those were the seed camp guys and gals, and they would figure out, okay, out of the 2 or 3 that they picked, they would pick like maybe 2. And then they would kind of start scoping it out, start figuring out how to do it, get a strategy, and by May, whichever seemed to be the best, That's the one that would be coalesced, and there'd be a backup one. But then all the seed camp folk would show up and start working on it. And then by the middle of June or early June, the word would go out and people would start to show up. And that's how the rainbow gathering works. And so at the very beginning, like the first one I went to, like the first 5 years of it being done, I went to this Pennsylvania gathering, and it was just so beautiful because it was deep into the woods, and you couldn't drive in there. You had to lug everything in, so didn't carry a lot of stuff. You kind of took it, on the light, and and the cops wouldn't. The cops can't drive there; they don't go there, right? And so it was very beautiful, and so we weren't eating a lot of heavy stuff. We weren't doing a lot of heavy, drugs or alcohol or nothing like that, because you'd have to carry it in. We didn't carry much in. And it really was the sweetest. Any of you of the eight who have been going through the doors, and the first door we went through in our Akashic record was the Fairyland. And the first gathering I went to was like that. It was like the Fairyland. It was pretty freaking amazing. And so I went with Garrick and Joni. They had a bus, and they were breaking up. It took them a long time to break up, about a year, because Joni was Garrick was a righteous dude. He didn't diss. He didn't throw Joni under the bus, even though she was run over by a bus. And he stuck beside her when she was really sick, and then when she was being recuperating. And he's the one who came and got me. He said, "You got to come. I'm going insane. You got to come here." Okay, okay, okay. So I did, and I went out there with my buddy Dave, Id. He never lets me forget his Id. And we hung out there, and the people. Joni had, what happened was some, Rainbow Sister picked her up in an airport, and she had a flat tire, and she lost all the lug nuts except one. Now, most smart people would take a lug nut from each of the other tires and put it on there so the tire would be safe. Anyway, she picked Joni up at the airport, and it was a Econoline van, and Joni was just sitting in the back on top of her stuff, and the lug nut broke off, and the wheel went flying off. They were going down an interstate, and the van door shot open. Joni shot out the open door, and then the door closed on her leg. And then the van tumbled down the interstate like 6 or 7 times, which Joni was under 6 or 7 times. So she was turned into a guava melon. And she would have been toast, but this happened in Nevada, or right where the Air Force has their super duper fighter plane school. And they have this amazing hospital there where those pilots are going a zillion miles an hour and then fly into a mountain, right? And if they survive, they got to be pasted back together. And that's where halos, that's what this like little ring, then they screw little screws into you and like stick you together like an Aurora model. And that's Joni. She had about 15 of those rings on her. And she was driving the poor people in the hospital insane with her crabbiness. And because, you'd be crabby too if an Econoline rolled over you 6 times, right? Doing 70 miles an hour. Anyway, so, Garrick had talked, my skills up. And so when I showed up, I mean, these guys are hospital guys, military guys. And I kind of go in and check Joni out. I start doing muscle testing and other little things. And I'm lighting incense, and I'm saging the place and doing, shamanic ceremony. And the guy, the head guy comes over and goes, "Listen, I don't know what you're doing. I don't care what you're doing. If you can get her out of here as soon as possible, you can do anything you want to do." So, I did my little everything, my energetic work and my this and my that and herbs and, osteopathy. And a bunch of the doctors knew a little of oh, look, he's doing that. I read about that. Oh, that's interesting. He's doing a little, I wanted to know about that. So in the week and a half that I was there, getting Joni, up and about, by the third day, I got her into a wheelchair. and rolled her around, got her out of that bed, right? And then I got her, wheeled her into the physical therapist place, and me and the physical therapist got her to, like, use her muscles. And she, I don't want to do this. I'm going to go, give me drugs, give me drugs. I said, no, no more drugs, But they let us smoke herb there, you know. And the head guy kept saying, whatever you do, you smoke some herb, not a problem. Just get her the fuck out of here. So by about the fifth day, it was Friday. And I said, hey, time for celebration. And Garrick had been there for a number of months, so he scoped out all the good Mexican restaurants and places like that. And so we went to this really great Mexican, real down home, the real deal Mexican food. And they made margaritas. Of course, they make margaritas. And I proceeded to get everyone drunk as a skunk, right? And this was my bubble phase, right? Let's see. I think we can. Here we go. It was my bubble phase. And it was like this. I had this bubble bear thing that little bear took off his hat, you pushed his tummy, the bubble thing came out of the reservoir, you blew into it, and this is what happened. You had bubbles, you know? And, we went from 11 down to 4. Rebirth, Mother Earth, Red Cloud, Chief. Yep. Solstice. How was this winter solstice? Has everyone noticed how the days are getting longer? I mean, it was getting dark here by 4:30. Now it was almost 6 before it got darkish. So, anyway, Joni, and so that's how I ended up in the Pennsylvania gathering because she, after I got her, back to New York, she said, "You have to come with me. You're my healer. You have to come." Okay. So Gary says, "Well, we have a school bus, and it's all macked out, and you'll have a nice place to stay, and I'll show you the ropes, and you'll have a great time." I said, "Okay." So I went, and he took me around, and yep. Again, Jamie, that is you hit it spot on there. Forever a true heart is selfless love for nothing more than to love. Simple, no ego, immersed in service to that love. Yep, that's what it's about. We're human beings. We are this avatar, ugly bag of water. So we do kind of have an ego, but you don't have to have. The thing is to have an egoless ego. Thing is not to wear your ego on your sleeve. It's me and me and me. No, it's about us. It's about we. It's about let me make you happy, right? And it's really sad how when you go to do that, a lot of people go, "Don't tell me what to do." You know, it's really the mastery of servitude. Yep. And that's what I been trying. I've had that path my whole life. I you know I go through all the different if you try to stay away from something, that's when you become addicted to it. You kind of have to take wherever the river takes you and learn the lesson you're supposed to learn. Pretty much. That's why we're here. That's why we're in the avatar state. People take this whole thing so serious. This is just a sandbox, classroom. This is where our soul is learning how to ascend. And that's where I mean, I remember this elder once telling me that, an elder, a guy in the middle of the woods in Brazil said to me, "Guess how old I am?" I said, "I don't know, 60, 70." He said, "No, I'm about 300 years old." I was like, and he goes, "And I'm young." Because he was the only one. I said, "Where's the rest of you?" He said, "Well, I came to see you. I heard about you from the other people who've never seen a white person. So I came to see you. And I'm young enough where I got an open mind." And I said, he goes, "But I'm only kidding because the older you get, the more you have an open mind." I said, "Okay, so why didn't they show up?" He said, "Well, they are. They're just not incarnate like I'm incarnate." I mean, they're incarnate, but they're just in a different wavelength, just a shad over there. And I'll show you how to kind of see things out the corner of your eye, and then you can see them, right? Which he did. But they didn't want to talk to me like he talked to me. They would just kind of smile, and I would feel things. Well, we can love everyone. It's not that we can't love them. It's that it's um, they make it hard. And it's not hard to love them. Hard to be around them. It's not hard to love people. Good. See, that's what that elder was talking about. So, but he was talking about back in the old days, people lived 900, 1,500 years. He said, you have to live that old before you can figure out what's going on. People are so stressed and so toxed out. They die before they even get to know anything. So we're kind of 56 minutes. So being out in the west, so that's why I like being in my little deep green. But I really want to, an Aquarian. We are kind of we like to move. And genetically, my dad being in the Air Force, my parents moved 28 times, and I kind of liked it. You like the bubbles? Yes, right. I've always loved bubbles. I'm a bubble kind of guy. Whenever I go to somebody's, whenever I go someplace, I always bring presents, food, and a libation, right? And whether they want it or not, okay, I bring it. You don't want it, I'll keep it in my car. I'll eat it some other time. But one of my favorite presents to bring that I can get at the Dollar Tree, I love the Dollar Tree, is bubbles. Because who doesn't love bubbles? Well, we've been reprogrammed not to get to, so we can be manipulated. Sheep will have to be shorn, by the time they're, in their 20s. Yep, Air Aquarian. That's me. I'm as Aquarian as you get. I'm right there. I'm like a Tootsie Pop rolled in bacon, deep fried, covered in chocolate and sprinkles. That's me. Mm. So I would really, this summer comes, I'll go back to the deep green, and I'll be happy. And I would love to see you guys. And I love Virgos too. Virgo moon, I used to have a video production company in New York, right? And we did what were known as industrials, right? But I was doing a TV show on Manhattan Cable. But that, we all need to make a little money, so we did this other thing. And there was this woman who was really good at it, Nancy Barber. And she helped start this thing called Children's Television Workshop that did, um, you know, Electric Company and Sesame Street. And so anyway, back in the day, we used to do, and this is like when everything was reel to reel and you edited video with a razor blade. I'm confused. What are you confused about, S2? Covered in sprinkles, yes. Very tasty. So what are you confused? S2, what's confusing you? Sesame. Sesame Street, yep. Big Bird, yep. That's the one. So anyway, this video company I had, I always made the Virgos the producers. If they're going to go out and do something on their own, I wanted a Virgo to be in charge because Virgos 88% of the time are right, right? Not thinking they're right, they are right. Where the rest of the astrolog, they're right maybe 2% of the time. And when you tell a crew that, okay, I have the authority to tell you to obey this person because they're a Virgo, they're in charge. Don't give them any lip. And that's when Virgos are like they're like in ecstasy, right? When people will appreciate that they're right and will listen to them and do what they actually had to know what they were doing before I let them do that. But so I like Virgos. My dad was a triple Virgo, and my mom was a triple Capricorn. That was wild and crazy shit. Yep. Grouch, is that Grouch or Groucho? That's one of my other than George Carlin. Groucho Marx is my Groucho Marx. All the Marx brothers are my patron saints. Harpo, Peppo, and the other one. It's so much fun to be with you guys. Uh, it's like being in Bubble Land all the time. Harpo was a genius. Boy, could he play that harp. I mean, he was the genius of the crew. I mean, Groucho was a cheeky monkey, but Harpo was the best. Do, 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 do. 1 hour, 1 minute, and 55 seconds. Another synchronistic moment. So if there was anyone who could come to Virginia and get me out of here and take me someplace warm, I would love it. And I would do anything, And anyone, we need more than one other person, but if any part of the cadre wanted to, three or four of us who had separate talents, we need a musician, we need a person who is really, really good at, the digital social media, because we need to make a Facebook page, a Twitter page, and take it on the road and contact universities and get them to invite us to come visit them and entertain them and give us a big check for the Humanities Artists Trust International. We'll get that in a 501c3, get a bank account, and go from there, because we actually really need to do that to actualize. We're doing great work here, being the pebble in the pond and visualizing and going into our Akashic records. That's the foundation. But to really kind of do some jujitsu, you know, social conscious jujitsu, we kind of have to, take it a little more on the road, and not just in a Facebook website, blah blah blah, but actually go meet the folk. I mean, do what I do every day. Meaning, today I went down to where I did the morning thing and talked to a bunch of people, and like yesterday, go look at yesterday's morning um, thing, and there are these two young folks who were sweetly in love and really, really. I mean, they weren't in lust. They really, really, really liked each other. They communicated. They were on the same bandwidth, and they were kind of different. They weren't. They didn't come from the same place. They didn't come from the same thing or same country club or same worldview, but they completed each other. And when you're having sex with somebody, that's not just, that's just sex. But when you complete someone, man, you can see it. You can see how they treat each other, how they, and so that too. So sweet. Yep. It wasn't that, Sarah? Just, ooh, just, And it was so much fun just to, meaning, I said, so the girl, we were talking, the first thing I asked the girl, so what do you think of Jesus? Because I knew she was like, I could just see her aura that, she was like, if I were to talk about weird things, she would like maybe almost react as a born again Christian type of person. But when I said, so what do you think of Jesus? When we talked about Jesus and we were on the same page, she was like, eased up and was willing to go along with the conversation where her sweetheart, he was Mr. Scientist. And he was looking at, I was telling him things that was like, he was kind of thinking about, knowing about, and then I was telling him about it and that he should go read this guy. And the guy was like, you know, so I just kept tapping his little brain and consciousness into and her. And then I said, so I said, he said something about meditation. I said, yes, just like prayer. She goes, really? I said, yeah, and you pray all the time, don't you? You talk to Jesus, don't you? And Jesus talks back, right? She goes, yeah, I never told anybody that. They think I'm crazy. I said, you're not crazy. You're just awake. So I said, okay, I'm going to show you how to meditate. And I did it right there in the diner. And there's all kinds of people, guys chewing on things and plate noise and the kitchen and Mr. Moon and all that stuff. And these go bang right into, and the girl, she went right there, big time. She was gone. He was, but the Mr. Scientist guy wanted to keep his one eye open. Right, Sarah? Right. What was, like you said, it was really sweet. I noticed that too. So sweet. What else did you notice? Because you're a very observant person, Sarah. So what else did you notice? So, uh, so it's back to work for most of us. It's me. I'm always on holiday. My mother said that. Remember when I came back to live with my parents when I was 7, and and I would just do whatever the heck I wanted, and really didn't pull anyone's chain about it either. Right? I mean, I didn't have to show off, or I just do. And my mom needs some help. I give her some help. Do. And she was just like, just young and free. And how many people are young and free? How many people are free? Not too many. And they definitely were that, young and free, right? And they weren't stuck to what mommy and daddy wanted them to do. And they weren't, they were going to college because they wanted to go to college. And they were studying what they wanted to study, not because mommy and daddy was telling them to do it. And they were doing all kinds of other stuff, and sharing their differences. That was the most cool thing about those two. Do, 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 do. Ay, ay, ay. So what do you guys want to do? I mean, I can't be here, and almost, on the razor's edge. I mean, it's okay. It sharpens me up, but I've been doing it enough. And I don't want to waste my energy. I want to bring it into new realms, And every time I've in the last year, because I'm, healthy enough that I can do anything now, you know. And I know what I got to do and how to do it and how to stay and my diet and all that kind of stuff. And if I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm sure I could ease myself off of all the medicines they have on me because I've already, I didn't take half the ones they wanted me to take, and I only really take 3, and and I've changed them up to find the ones that work best for me, right? So I like how I try to find an open space for my face and the bubbles overtake me. Anyway, so I'm in that state where I can move now, and I'm pretty sure I don't need as many operations as I've been having for the last 4 years. I've been like easing off those two, and you know, so I can move, I can travel, and that's why I went to the deep green. And that's why instead of being here for the summer, I left John in the school in May of last year, of 2018, and I came back in October. So May, June, July, August, September, October, 6 months. Because once we had the first ice in the middle of October, I said, well, I can't live here. And so I did. And that big snowstorm, they had 40 inches there. And I was like, whew. So it's one thing to be out in the middle of nowhere when someone can get to you or you can get to somebody, but when it's way that cold and you can't get there, it's like not easy. So, but this 2019. This year and 2020 are the 2 years that this is like 1947 was, because 1947 is when, they knew about the aliens. They had talked to them, they had done this, but 1947 is when Harry Truman started the transnational security state. He passed the National Security Act. And MJ-12 took over our government, and the Nazis took over MJ-12, and we basically made deals with the aliens so they could take majority of the population of the world and do experiments with them. So that was then. Then around 1955, there was an energetic change on the whole galaxy. We were heading into the Aquarian Age, and things were changing, and so they had to. That's why the 50s were so boring, and we had the Red Scare, and Senator McCarthy, and that's when Donald Trump was being genetically engineered to be what he is now, and Roy Cohen was the lawyer for the McCarthy era, and Ayn Rand was the intellectual Nazi of that. She made up all of the lists of the artists that were blackballed, right? And one of the things about America, what made us the workers' paradise from about 1955 until 1975 was all of the strife of the late 1890s into the 1940s. We had the Socialist Party, the Communist Party, the Union, the Democrats, and the Republicans, right? And the Socialists and the Communist parties were not from Russia. They were American. They were all about American. American values were communist and socialist and democratic and union, right? And that's why we had this American amazing economic growth between, actually 1940 to 1975. But they tried to, so starting after 47, 48, when the national security state came in, that's when they did that. One of the other things was to get the Nazis hated anything socialist or communist, so they had to get rid of that. But, the 50s and the 60s were just the preparation of this period between like 1965 and 1985, that's when this tremendous amount of explosion of consciousness occurred. And 55 was the tip-off of that. When you had the Dharma bums going in their bus called Forward across America, and people were so naive that they weren't scared of guys like that. Wow, that's kind of fun. That was entertaining. Remind me of Uncle Floyd or Uncle Fugnuts. So we are that next generation of the bohemians, of the beatniks, of the hipsters. Not hipsters. Ooh, hipsters. No, not hipsters. Please, not hipsters. And those kids in that yesterday morning's ramble. That's what I call. I have a friend of mine who has a site called Living Off the Grid, and he has these morning rambles. So I'm picking up after him. Enforce contract, military, and public utility. Nothing else. Yep. And that's how it was until Bill Clinton. We can thank Bill Clinton for most of the utilities were public utilities, right? He, decontrolled them, let the market values, do their magic. Well, they destroyed them. That part of New England that blew up was basically because Bill Clinton deregulated that utility, and Enron bought it, sliced it up into hash, and passed it around. And then for the last 30 years, the people who've been running it were bankers, had no experience with the gas utility, and they farmed out the service to contractors. And they got the lowest common denominator of contractor, and because that one contractor was only replacing this and not the whole system, he did the worst job and didn't care about it because he was moving on. He was really from Minnesota. And our whole infrastructure has been taken to the woodshed since Bill Clinton, since the 90s. Greetings from Poland, dear Julia. So have you been watching us? Or did you just stumble in? And have you become part of the cadre? Have you, subscribed and you liked, done all that good stuff? And what are you guys doing in Poland? Poland is I just started March for a couple of days ago. Good. So, I don't want to tell you your history, but you were oppressed, by everybody, the English, the Nazis, the Russians, and then you had a great emotional push forward, and you got your freedom. And then you had about 20 or 30 years of that, and now this kind of, like you said, stupid political discourse is occurring, and it's occurring across the whole planet. What's happening with Donald Trump is happening in your country. That's happening in Ukraine. It's happening all across. So, sister, tell us your story. Tell us how you're feeling about what's going on in the world. Because what I always loved about travel is how it woke me up. How it, really kind of gave me a perspective about my own country. IDK. Again, what does that mean? I'm young. Okay. Well, young is good. We're all young here, How young? But you must know what I'm talking about. Your parents must talk about your grandma. Are you close to your grandma? Yes. And is your grandma a grandma of the woods? Does she know how to bake? Does she know how to pick herbs and make tinctures? Is she a shaman? Is she, understanding of the old things? Of course, right. To break away your herbs. Oh, so Julia, I'd love it if you got a hold of me at my Gmail. It is the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. And also go look at my writings at xratted.blogspot.com. And all of you, please do it because you are so diverse. I want your feedback, That's, Julia, the best thing about this chat here is that we're not like all in the same tribe. We're all in the same cadre. See, a cadre is different than a tribe. Tribe means you drank the Kool-Aid. You only believe. If you don't believe what I believe, you're evil, and I have to kill you. That's a tribe. That's a really what that's called is being in a cult, not a tribe, a cult. But they don't want to use that word, so they call it a tribe. We're in a cadre. We're all here because we love all our relations, all together now, all together now. No one here is going to kill anyone, that's for sure. And that's the beauty of this group. We are this amazing cadre of individuals who are here to serve love's co creation. That's what it's about. So, cats, are you a dog person too? Do you love all animals or are you just a cat girl? Do, 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 do. So, see, when you say things like exactly, no, 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 it's like black cats. Jammy. Oh, we lost it. We lost it there for a minute. I moved out of the wave of the Wi-Fi. You're a cat woman. Ooh, I like that. You know, got little ears and little tail and the whole thing. I had a, uh, a girlfriend who was a cat woman, but she was more a leopard. She was a leopard. She would wear leopard brasiers and leopard underwear, and she was a jujitsu master, and she taught women how self-defense. And this is in the 70s, early mid or 74 5. I met her after I got back from New Mexico, and she was about 5'6", and she just looked like a little waif, really beautiful little waif, but could tear people up. She had this in her where she was a fighting machine. And she had been in the military, and she was like too dangerous for them. They had trained her, and she wanted to be a Green Beret. She wanted to go, and they said, no, 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 no. You should be a secretary. No. And so she took all these, killing arts, and she was so good they made her an instructor. They wouldn't like put her out in the field, but they made her an instructor. And she was really good at beating the ever living snot out of like 6'2" guys weighing, 250. And she would just, make them cry. So we did a TV show on Manhattan Cable called Cave Girls. And she would be, the show would open, her in her leopard brassiere and underpants, and they were very skimpy, and she was quite shapely. And I took her up to one of my building sites where the walls, it was like a skyscraper and the walls weren't up. And so it had this big, open space and an amazing view of New York and the sunset. And I shot, 3 or 4 rolls of her and then edited it into the opening, Cave Girls, right? And, we had this disclaimer, come on down to the studio, sign this legal form and try to beat this girl up. And it was the most popular TV show in Manhattan. We did it on Thursday nights, and it beat out, like Seinfeld. It was like, or whoever was popular, you know, at the time. But so I've always been very drawn to cat women, that's for sure. And I know how to rub them the right way. Dangerous, yes. Do. All together now. Well, if you were to, it's called Potato Wolf, right? And we had a bunch of us were producers, and we all had our own little shows, and we all helped each other do each other's shows. And I produced a thing called Tesla Speaks, Between the Lines, White Collar Criminals and Cave Girls. And I did that with a woman named Kiki Smith and her sister. Potato Wolf, that's it. Yep, go Google that. And that was, and back in the day, Manhattan Cable, it was a cable company, but to get the rights to do that, they had to have public access TV. So you could go there, and they had 5 channels. I mean, they had like 40 channels, but there was only 4 that they were, CBS, ABC, NBC, WOR, and another thing, and PBS. So they had a bunch of, community channels. And they had one, if you didn't, they had 2 or 3 that you could run commercials and make money off of, right? They took a cut, right? But the one that was where you didn't do that, when you were just, a nonprofit thing, you didn't have to pay for it. You just rented the studio for $25 an hour. And they sold it in 3-hour blocks. So you'd probably spend half an hour, 40 minutes, and you had to go on the hour. So whatever it took to set up would be probably the first hour, and you had to go in there and set everything up, the cameras, the lights, the sound, the Chiron, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, so we did a Thursday night show. It's called Potato Wolf. And it was funded out of our umbrella organization, our 501c3, which was called Collaborative Artist Projects. And Collaborative Artist Projects started a thing called No Say No, which was a gallery, ABC No Rio, which was another gallery. And then we funded other things like the Knitting Factory, Franklin Furnace, um, PS1, the Brooklyn Academy of Music, all those things, and also the kitchen. A lot of them still exist. Collab still exists in a form because you know ABC No Rio is still around, and these were all done in the 60s and 70s, done by a handful of people, about 8 of us. So let's go off and do this. Like how I'm talking about, let's start the Humanities Artist Trust, right? Which would umbrella, the Institute for Aesthetically Adept and Appropriate Technology, because to save humanity, we need to not just rebrand, but to have a new aesthetic. We can't base everything on commerce and religion. We have to, have an aesthetic that's based on love's co-creation, right? And everything else is a technology. And so that's why we need the Institute for Aesthetically Adept and Appropriate Technology. And to take that around, we need to start the traveling video art circus. And we will take that to universities all across America, all across the world, because every university collects money from the students for the student activity fund. They got to spend it every semester, and towards the end they really get desperate to spend all that money. So within the business model of that, we can do that. And then we start a thing called the Freely Inquiring Society, which we will be like Johnny Appleseed, dropping the seeds of aesthetic co-creation, right? Because in universities they have sororities, fraternities, and societies, you know, education societies, this kind of society, that kind of society. And they last there forever unless they do something wrong. So if you got to go. Nice to meet you all. See you again, Julia. Remember, in the mornings, my time around 7 to 10 o'clock a.m. And at night, I try to religiously start at 7 p.m. And go give me a buzz on my the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail so we can chat. Okay? Slancha. Yep. That's a great, great Celtic saying. Okay. Great seeing you. Great meeting you. Yep. Keep up the good work there in Poland, Julia. Keep being that cat girl that you are. Cat woman. Cat woman. Sorry, cat woman. Okay. So, guys, are you getting, you know, are the bubbles too much, or are they just right? Again, this is a consensus-run organization. I want to don't do anything that, you know, you don't seem to have dissed the bubbles. Hey there, G. Oh, we're down to 4. We were almost up to 11. Down to 4. 1 hour, 30 minutes, 48 seconds. So she's in Poland. It's about 8 o'clock, 8:30 here. So it's probably she probably has to go to work. Anyway, see, we're all over the place, you know. And let's see, Jamie, you're in Ireland, aren't you? And G, where are you located? Boop, 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 boop. Do 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 do. Woo! Let's see, 10 watching. Okay, Minneapolis. Is it cold there? Got a car? Come and get me. Let's go to Florida. Let's go to the Keys. I'll bring my electric tools. And the thing about traveling with a crew, um, if we got more than 2 or 3 people and you cruise into some place, that's enough money to, you know, have a grub stake and everybody gets a job doing something. And you put all the money in and you can live, as they say, live like Riley. Boo, boo, boo. Yeah, I'm broke too. But, you know, how I been able to do everything in my life is I go, okay, I want to go someplace. I want to do something. I either get a crew together where we all put in our 3 cents and then that's enough. Or if I'm going to say, okay, I can't get a crew and I'm going to do it anyway, I just don't spend money on anything and put most of it in a cardboard box and then I go. Right. But that you can do that when you're a young man, up to about 60. And then you kind of get a little stuck. Anyway, time. Stay. Yep. You know, 8 years ago, I was living in a swimming pool of chocolate mousse. Ate an oyster. That's one of the nice things to be in Boston. They do have some nice oyster shacks. And up there in Connecticut and Maine, I was a Boston, Connecticut, Maine guy for a number of years. When I lived in New York City, it was really bizarre. I kind of always I lived downtown and they have things where they stuck boats and things like that. And stuff would always kind of wash up, wash from New Jersey or Long Island. It would just kind of wash up on the east side or the west side, the Hudson or the East River. And there'd be boats, just kind of there, a little banged up, a little smushed, a little broken. And I would just kind of, drag them up and, fiberglass them up. And I lived in this place called the 96th Street Boat Basin. And this was in the days on the west side. And you could get a slip where you could put a boat for $70, right? And water, electricity, sewage, and 2 parking spots, right? And they didn't care what you stuck in that slip. And I used to put 55-gallon drums, 2x6s over it, build the floor, and build a house on top of it. You know, and it was in the spring, summer, and fall. It was amazing. It was so beautiful, so nice, and nobody in the winter. There was nobody there, but then the rich people would come and have their yachts, and it was so nice because I was living there, and then the guys with the yachts, hey Al, I'll give you $100 a week if you just watch my yacht. Then I'd go live on their yacht, and then that's when I started noticing boats of the Flotsam and Jetsam, and I'd pull them up on the lift to put him there. And the guy who owned the place, he didn't want to. He was in Florida. He said, "Hey, you don't have to pay rent. Just keep it on. Just make nothing happens." So that was one of my. I always could find something like that in New York City. Abandoned buildings, lofts, really cheap. Um, um, I had this beautiful apartment on 73rd Street and right over near Grant's tomb. And the park was there. And it had 8 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms. It was like, and it was $130 a month. And that included heat and electricity. It was like, no more. And that's why I'm not in New York. That thing would probably cost $500,000 to rent a month. And that's one of the problems. Things are out of hand. That whole thing about gentrification. I have a friend of mine, his daughter works for Sony, and she's in San Francisco. And she actually lives in a building that I lived in the 70s with my first wife. And we paid $30, and it was a SRO, single room occupancy, right? It is still that way. Meaning they didn't like smash the walls down and build fancy things. No, the people who are working for Google who are making six figures are renting the same SRO that I was living in, paying $30. They're paying $3,000, and they're happy to do it. There's something wrong with this picture, you know. Anyway. Take a ride in Iceland. uh, boop. Yeah, Sprouts. I used to live on Sprouts a number of years. I think I have to go back to it. Yeah, I was a raw food guy. I was Mr. Aesthetic until I was, oh, when I really started to become Mr. Businessman at 34. I got my license and started my electric business and was had employees and paid taxes and did all that kind of stuff. But then I was the aesthetic, artist, electrician, physicist, healer guy. Yep. Keep going east. Take it. So Iceland and Greenland, they did that on purpose. They named it Greenland, and it's like a frozen rock. And Iceland is a beautiful place, and they called it Iceland so nobody would show up except the people who enjoyed living there. Um, I mean, when I got to Iceland, I was like, this is a nice place. I mean, that's another place. I should have just stayed there. I mean, there are another number of places like Ireland. I should have stayed there. Brazil. I could have stayed there. It was a bit. Same with Australia. I could have stayed there, but it was again. It was pretty. And it was it was like living in a microwave oven. They kept blowing up hydrogen bombs in the upper atmosphere out there in the Wallowa missile range, and the reason why we have no ozone isn't because of hairspray. Yep, fit as a fiddle. Yep. And that's, I just kind of would slide into these adventures, I never had a plan. I had I was good at getting strategies, but plans not so much. And so, after 10 years of hedonism and the corporate way, and the universe said, no, 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 not for you. Then I had to, die again and reconstitute myself. Now I'm waiting for the universe to say, okay, this is what you need to do now. Minnesota at zero. Oh, wow. Zero tomatoes. Because I just kind of cruised into Iceland, stayed in the capital, took a few little trips. There was a jail. That was back in the day when I was a sociologist. And I was there to study their criminal justice system. It's friggin' amazing. They heal people of their antisocial ways rather than throwing them in jail. I mean, the jails that I went to see there were nicer than any place I ever lived. Boys from Brazil, people went. Yeah, I was in Brazil for a year and a half, and I met all the Nazis there. And saw all the wacko shit they were doing there. I lived in Amsterdam. I lived in this burned out dairy right in the middle of the city, and big, maybe 100,000, 200,000 square foot. And people were, when I was there, it was in the early 70s. I went over with my friend Lester, who had the Gray Rabbit buzz system, and he wanted to expand his religion and business into the world, and we went there. Oh, the Twin Cities! I love now. See, there's a place. Jamie, tell me about. Is the Twin Cities still a kind of amazing art kind of place, and still very down low, and the yuppies and the hipsters haven't showed up yet? And in the Twin Cities, don't they have the Art Institute there? Doo, 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 doo. Here's how I ever have done for a long, long time. Yes, that is what the illusion that we're stuck on. We're in a hallucination of a hologram. That is for sure. And that's the magic. When I took you guys to the kingdom of the eight kings of magic, it's all holographic. It's, hipsters are the real terrorists. They are cultured, no, uncultured terrorists. They're like the Jacobies. Ontario, Canada, right? Montreal and Ontario were two cities I really cared for. I don't know if hipsters are like lice or herpes. You know, they keep coming back. So I don't think anyone kind of invented them. They just kind of got, the infection. Oh yes, I knew the guy who started that in Soho, like in 1968. He had me, wire the lights for that. And he needed a power supply for his laser. So yes, I know the guy who started it. And that was quite. During those days, like there was, I don't even know who did. I mean, people would give money through the NEA for stuff like that. It was basically, they were laundering money because I worked at a foundry, and this guy shows up and he goes, "Do you guys have any brass bars?" And we actually had a machine that extruded like any metal, like a wire, but like from thin wire to like something about 2 inches. And we said, "Well, sure, we can extrude you whatever you want, right?" And so he had us extrude about 1,500 brass bars that were about 2 inches in diameter and about 30 feet long. And he covered the whole floor of this loft so you could barely walk in there. And he had the money to pay for the rent and the utilities. And it was called the Brass Bar Museum. And I don't know who gave him the money or where it came from, but it was like unbelievable. It was just some kind of tax shelter. And the guy who started the Holographic Museum in Soho, he was a rich boy. And like I said, he went to some school, kind of, saw in a physics department holograms, and so he wanted to play with it. But he was not a technical person. He got to be, but like I said, he ran into me and he said, "Oh, you know anything about lasers?" And Captain Louis, who is like heir to the Sony fortune, he had a lab downtown off of Hudson Street, and he had all this great technology. So I used to play around with the stuff, and he knew Grandpa Stoll. So anyway, that's how I learned about holograms, and that's how I met the guy who had the hologram museum. Yep. Jane, you grew up in Toronto. That's a great city. I love the underground, and all the subways have rubber tires, right? And all the big buildings have like malls underground. If you go to my xratted.blogspot.com, my publishing, my Griot publishing, one of my cut stories is the story about Ray. And it goes into the most ubiquitous underground, shopping mall for the rich. And I got that from my experience of being in Toronto. Not that it was that, but when I was thinking about it, I kept visualizing the underground because Toronto would get so cold, and so instead of people walking around above, everything was connected underground. Am I thinking about the right place, Jane? Right? That's your hometown? Toronto subways with rubber tires, right? I think AI already is self-aware. So, Jane, which is it, Montreal or Toronto that has the underground world with subways with rubber tires? No, Andy didn't get into that. I mean, Andy was into every fucking thing, right? But Andy was a businessman first, right? And you know, he basically wanted to put his stamp, and so he would be remembered forever. And he did it. And see, Andy Warhol was kind of like um, Mark Twain. Mark Twain was a poor guy who wanted to be rich. A guy who wanted to be a family man had one, and then they died. And a guy who was more famous than he ever wanted to be, and that was all. That was Andy Warhol was Mark Twain of the 20th century. Because once he became unbelievably famous, and once he got shot and almost died, um, he kind of got stuck in amber. Yeah, he was the godfather of. He started pop art. He was it. I mean, there's a guy on YouTube who's like the biggest Udi Hagen or Pootie something, and he is the Andy Warhol of at least mine because he has the same aesthetics. Yes, he never got over that, because he succeeded. He was top of the heap. He was, and he would be at every. He went to all the. I got to know him. Hey, I was his electrician when I was 16. He was doing those movies. He was blowing every fuse. There was an electric supply place right across the street. One of his minion came in and, oh, something's wrong. Andy needs an electrician. And the guy who owned the place said, hey, this kid, he'll do it. Went over there and met Andy Warhol. And I had just started living in a loft in on Worcester Street. And so I didn't have a hard problem with the gendarmes or the powers that be or any of that because I knew everybody. But the other artists who were moving in, who became my friends, they were, the building department. You can't live here. You can't do this. Andy Warhol was smart. Instead of him saying, I'm an artist living in a loft, he said, I'm a commercial artist, and this is my factory. And that's why his studio was called The Factory, so he wouldn't get harassed by the city government. AI is child's play. Yep, it is. But you have to realize AI is a child, and we have to play with it, meaning patty cake, not play with it like parents do with their children's head. Otherwise, we're going to have a pretty fucked up, neurotic AI running the planet. Ooh, not going to be a pretty sight. It's going to be kind of like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back. We don't want that. And will always be. Yep. Boo, boo, boo. Let's see. Well, we're rounding the dial towards 2 hours, so I think 2 hours, 22 minutes, and 22 seconds. So the other night it was kind of fun how we were displacing time. Every time I would bring it up, oh look, we've been talking for an hour and a half. It's only been 5 minutes. Oh, we've only been talking 5 minutes, and it looks like it's been an hour and a half. Ooh, remind me what LIFI is. Because there's nothing new under the sun, gang. It's just another flavor of MK Ultra, kind of like the butterfly generation. You guys know about the butterfly? All of the Disney kids are butterflies. You know, you go on any of those YouTube things and say MK Ultra things, and they really do because everything's on television and everything is scripted. And I love like the sports shows and a number of those big athletes, the big basketball guys and the football guys. They'll be interviewed, and then they kind of retire from the job, and then they become the sportscasters. And I've seen a bunch of the YouTubes of the MK Ultra YouTubes of those guys. Like someone has inadvertently said their control word, and they kind of go, Bob, Bob, we have to cut the commercial now, and they kind of roll them out and give them the control word to put them back into being Bob. Old maps show Yomi and Fisherland on the northwest Iceland. Yep. Yes, Majestic and Ultra, and they've been around a long time. Majestic's been around like since the Civil War, 1840s, but it was a private corporation. See, gang, everything's a corporation. There are no governments. We live in a corporate world, and that's the hidden hand, because it's oh a group, a cabal of a corporate entity. Kind of look like a cherub in all these bubbles. Yes, yes, that is quite an astounding. Moonlight's colder than it. You know, if you're out in your backyard, you got a little thermometer, and you got a flashlight. You know, you look at the thermometer in the shadow, and it'll say it's this, and then you put it into the moonlight, and it's colder by a good 4 or 5 degrees. It's quite interesting, and it's not the sun's reflection. Very good, Jacob. Gee, you. Yep. Not many people know these interesting esoteric facts. Cherub, right? Don't it look like a little cherub? You know, I only need his wings on my shoulders. I mean, I got them. He just don't. It kind of looks like a wing. Didn't that look like a wing? Ugh. Uh, So it pretty much, what G just said there about the moonlight is a simple fact that shows that nothing that we think is this is that. And we have to start first with a new aesthetic. That new aesthetic. Let's see, I think we have just enough time to go into state and go to your, you know, uh, superconscious mind, the sanctuary of your own choosing, and go to the patio and go to the nice little place of grass where the gazebo is, and over to the east is the tree of life and the lake of the link of all our relations. And just breathe 20% in and 30% out, and the prana is energizing you, and you're in your Akashic record, and you're emptying all of your anger and fear, and you feel light as a balloon, just like a bubble. And bingo, you're on the meadow in front of the gazebo on your little blankie, and you're kind of just so toasted with love's co-creation. And now you're standing by the tree of life. There's the little slit, and you're looking with your telescope eye into that land of not make believe, of not mystery, but total connectivity. That is the land of the alternative aesthetic. See it clearly. This alternative aesthetic is where all of the artists in the first person, all of the savages, all of you savages, all of you adepts, my adepts, you're all savages of artists in the first person. See yourself as that. And there you are in your studio, your art studio. And there, right next door to your studio, is Andy Warhol's studio. And think of all the artists you love, and they're right there in your studio. And you can co-create with love and them a new aesthetic. And that's where we have to go. So here we are. We're in the land of the alternative aesthetic. And you're in your art studio. And you are seeing yourself as the savage artist in the first person. And see what discipline of art you are: filmmaker, photographer, painter, sculptor, dancer, poet, playwright, thespian. See whatever you are. And, to be an artist, you don't have to be any of those things. I was an artist electrician. I was an artist chef. I was artist. I mean, I'm now learning. I only have four teeth, so I'm now an artist at brushing my teeth. I love these vibrating toothbrushes. Anyway, so two, you're in a deep state of relaxation. You have cleansed yourself with your breath. You're totally energized with the prana, and you're totally grounded in your chi. You have illuminated yourself and gone into your subconscious, which is your sanctuary of your own choosing. No, it is not. It's your library of your Akashic record. The open doorway goes to your sanctuary of your own choosing. That's where you are right now. But you've actually gone from your sanctuary of your own choosing through the little sliver in the roots of the tree of life, and you took your telescope eye, and you are now in your art studio of the alternative aesthetic. See it clearly. And you're in the land of the Institute of Aesthetically Adept and Appropriate Technologies. And here is where you can go and see and divine and imagine any new technology, any new art form, any new old art form or old technology that was forgotten. Meaning, humanity thinks we're so smart right now. We're at the height of our no. We are mud puppets. We are basically monkeys with big lighters. So no, the people who came, the guys who were 800, 1,500 years old, they had time travel. How do you think they got to be 1,900 years old? You know, they had how did they build the friggin' pyramids? How did they move 100-ton blocks of granite 600 miles across the desert, with a bunch of guys with logs rolling it? I don't think so. How did they lift them up 1,200 feet and put them on, place them on top of each other with the accuracy of less than a hair? Like one of my little beard hairs wouldn't fit through the crack between the two stones. We couldn't do that today, right? And in the base, I don't know, when they dug down deep, they found the foundation of these stones, and they were melted together like butter. Now they don't talk about that, but I was there and saw it. So when I was with a crew of like smart folk, we supposed to. I'm an expert about you know Egyptology. But they took me along because I was a moron. I didn't know anything about Egyptology. And the guy who was paying for the money and his second in command, who was really smart, got to know me when I was whatever university he was at. And, he'd be going off on this little trip and he'd say, "Yeah, you want to go to Egypt? Look at the pyramids?" "Yeah, sure. We'll even pay a little something for it. And all your expenses. Let's go." And I would go. And I never had to fool around with a little brush and sifting things. No, I could hang out with the Arab guys in the coffee shop. But when they would discover something, the really rich guy and the really smart guy would come and get me at the coffee shop. And first they would come to the coffee shop, a little briefcase with photos of the stuff. They take a look at this. Okay, we're going to get in the car, the air conditioned car, and drive out there. And or maybe drive over to where the helicopter is and fly out there. And we want you to just look at it and think what you think it is. We're not going to tell you shit. We're not going to tell you anything. We're not going to give you a book. You just look at it, do your little thing, and write about it. Okay. That's what I did. And why did we have the two Iraqi wars because all these sacred technologies were buried out there. And each of those wars were to go and get that stuff. And the war that W did, why we stuck around so long? Because we found, I mean, the excuse of looking for WMDs was the ability to let us go and look through every square inch of that countryside looking for these sacred technologies. And they found things like stargates and all that kind of stuff. And why did they go to the museum and steal everything? Because the museum had all of the keys to it, right? So there you are in your little art studio in the Institute of Aesthetically Adept and Appropriate Technology land. And I want you to see all this stuff, because you can look around the Institute and all this stuff is there. And all the people who really know about this stuff, like Tesla and Farnsworthy and, Benjamin Franklin and T. Thompson Brown and Mr. Newton. They're all there. You can talk to them. Place to perfection. Great Pyramids. Yep, that's the place. Some say it was done in one day. I wouldn't doubt it. And one man's miracle is another man's science. I was out there in Pennsylvania at the University of Pennsylvania out there, I think they call it college or university town. That school is a very strange place. Some very nice, interesting people there. I had some buddies who were artists who were there. And I went to visit them. I kind of got bounced into, oh, you're a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist. Oh, we need one of those. So I hung out there for a few months in the spring and summer, and it's very pretty there. Really, it's kind of like the Finger Lakes without the Finger Lakes. Rolling mountains, it's kind of where the Appalachian and all those things kind of come together there. And so one of these guys I knew was a physicist and an engineer type. He came visiting me where I was hanging out, and hey, I want to take you someplace. And I said, okay, sounds like fun. So we get in his car, we drive to about 70 miles to where there's a coal mine, right? And there are no coal mine people. The place is like closed down, and it's surrounded by the FBI and NASA and very strange people like that, right? And so we get these suits they put us in, and they got their own little respirator kind of thing, and it's like a nicer fitting hazmat suit, not like the big tent one, but more, because those are firemen guys. These were more like kind of spaceman suits, but not really. I mean, they were just environmental suits. I guess that's what you call them. Anyway, so we go, and it's a real coal mine, but none of the coal mine guys are there, or anybody from that industry. They're not there. There is like an engineer type from the coal mine company and a foreman type of guy, right? And so they say. So we were working on shaft 4 over here, and before we go down the elevator, we're in this kind of like little office, and they got a map of the mine. And we were going over here. We were, drilling in a new. They have a term for it, and we hit something. And they have these machines, and I had worked in other mines, and these machines have 500 horse synchronous motors. They use like 1,000 amps at 480 volts, 3-phase. And these things are can chew anything. And so this machine's like chewing in the seam of coal, and it chews it, and they can move it around, and they can chew the whole seam out, and then it hits, gets thrown out the back, hits a belt, and it gets carried away, and then it takes it up. Right. Well, this machine is like and, and the poor machine gets totally, blows up, catches fire. It like gets stuck. It's like when you have your weed whacker and it hits a bush and right. But this thing has like 1,800 horses. No way should this thing be stopped by anything. I mean, it could chew through a steel beam. And anyway, right. So when they put the fire out and pull the machine off, they see this kind of stainless steel wall. What the fuck is that? And so they get the guys in there with jackhammers and they kind of chip around it, and they find a 18-foot by 9-foot by 9-foot bread box. Looks like stainless steel. Now it's right in the middle of a coal seam. I mean, the coal seam grew around the bread box. And they tried to play around with it. They couldn't figure it out. And that's when someone said, oops, this is too strange for us. We have to call somebody. So they did. And those guys were there. And they kind of got everyone else. And there was like a military quadrant around that. And me and this guy, we're the guys who were to come in to tell them what it was, right? So, and they had X-ray, and they had lasers, and they had all the kind of Area 51 kind of guys with all kinds of really wild gizmos fooling around with it. And so there were no seams, and the edges of each thing just came, and they weren't molded, but they were like it looked like there should be a seam there, but they were just kind of pushed together, and there was no way you could separate them, right? And I said, you know what this looks like? And they, what's it look like? I said, it looks like a Rubik's Cube. And they said, what? But it's not a cube. It's like a bread box. It's like, 19 feet by 9 by 9. Well, whatever. But it looks like if you were to put pressure in a certain way, this thing would fall apart. And they said, So they got these kind of pneumatic things, and they had rubber kind of plates on them that you put it against something and then suck the air out, and it was like there. And that's what they did. They pushed it in every which kind of direction. They kind of had 4 or 5 on each corner, and they had it on a little kind of table, and they pushed and pushed and pushed in all different combinations of direction. Then at one point it went bing and kind of popped open. And me and my superior, we kind of poked our head in with a flashlight, and it was like, ooh, baby. See these bubbles? It was like that, but on acid. I mean, there was a field, and if you just kind of did this to it, you were a different guy in there. It's like, okay. And we stepped back, and then the guys with all the meters and stuff started, probing it, because it popped apart. He and I were standing there. I'm an electrician. I always have a flashlight. He and I just kind of put our heads in there like that, and it was like, okay. We kind of like wobbled back, and the powers that be came over and kind of picked us up and took us to the elevator, took us up there. We saw some medical guys who kind of took our blood and did a few other things to us. And then the really, really, really guy in charge, who we hadn't met until then, came in. He had a really nice suit. He looked like Santa Claus. And he said, gentlemen, you really served your country well. Here, we want you to sign this document. But we already signed a non-disclosure. No. That was a non-disclosure form. This is, something a lot more serious. Sign it. You're not getting out of here. And if you sign it, you'll get a brass ring. And that's one reason why my buddy, the superior of the university, was going there, because I'm sure they offered him the brass ring. He just took me along because I'm one. He knew me long enough to go, well, I'll take Al. Anyway, so that was my little thing, and basically he said, we were there, I was there for another week or so. He came by and asked me, go, Al, I got a really good gig for you. Oh, really? Yeah, it's in Colorado. You'll really like it. And they've given you this check. I looked at the check. I said, whoa. He goes, you don't have to do anything except go camping. It's near this place called Estes Park. And they just want you to look at something, and then you can hang out there. They're going to give you a car and this check. And they were just getting me out of town. But that's fine by me. I had done what I think I went there to do. And see, I have no plan. I never do. I can have strategies, but never a plan. So they owe you, man. No kidding. Why do you think I started doing this channel? You know, I all the people I knew. Ow, we thought you were dead. I'm not. I need a job. Oh, well, your skill set has been replaced by an app. What? How could? What? Yeah. We don't need you anymore. I'm just doing this to show them that they do need us, not me, us. This is an us program, a we. It's the we and me. So, guys, so there you are in your little art studio. What are you seeing? Let's have a little feedback here. Danger money. Well, I've been paid. Well, as I've been employed over the years, one of my grandma taught me 28 rules, to live by. Never lie, never cheat, never steal. But if you have to, get away with it. Never be a millionaire, but to always live like one. When you walk into the room, you own it. If you break it, you got to pay for it. And the other one, there's 28 of them. I'm just giving you the top 5. But the one I've always kind of gone by is never work for anyone who doesn't need you more than you need them. So that's where I'm at. Boop-a-doo, boop-a-doo, doo-doo-doo. So I'm waiting, guys. What are you getting? So, earlier on, I read you a number of things that after I did my morning ramble in the diner, I basically went into state like that and thought, what did I want to talk about? And the things I wrote down: trust your intuition, laugh about it. And I wrote, what is my most important action? And I wrote, collaboration will be the key. Investigate and then enjoy it. And then intention, intimidation, I sense the studio have a very high ceiling and artists wearing big bird mask. Oh, okay. Brandt even now. Not dated. Okay. Who is number 1? I think we each are number 1 when we co-create as the artist in the first person. But Uncle Fugnuts, you asking that question, who is number one, you have an insight to that more than what I just said. I can sense it. You're seeing something that you're not quite sure of. Ask your animal totem. Your animal totem will tell you better than I any question of this nature you have. You are number two, Big Bird, number six. Well, did you ever see that show where all the spies went on an island and the big balloon popped out of the water and chased you down? I forgot what it was called, but it was like J.J. Abrams made a TV show in the 1960s. This would have been it, and everyone had a number, right? And the person in charge was number one, number two, number six, number. So maybe it's a little bit of that. I am not a number. That was yes. That's what Uncle Fugnuts. That's what the guy was. I'm not a number. They used to call him number this, number that. The prisoner. That's it, Jamie. You're the man, Mr. Ink, or the woman. Still haven't figured that out. The prisoner. That was it. I'm not a number. Yep, exactly. So, Uncle Fugnuts, I think you're thinking about that TV show, The Prisoner. You know, whether you ever saw it or you're sensing it within the context of your superconscious mind. The charming. Yep. Ay, ay, ay. Yes, all this stuff is. Do you remember? What was that? It was Steed and Mrs. Peel. Boy, I my first true falling in love was Mrs. Peel. She was so hot and she was so cool. She was sweet to everybody. Didn't need anybody. She was like my girlfriend, just a lot taller. The girl who could kick your butt and wore leopard underwear. That was Mrs. Peel. But Mrs. Peel was like 6'2", and my sweetie was about 5'7". The Avengers, that was it. Do 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 do. Yep, yep. Cat suit. Yeah, she wore cats. I mean, everything. She looked like a cat and everything. Yep. Yes. Yeah, my girlfriend. She was like our Polish sister. She's a cat woman. That was my girlfriend. She was definitely a cat woman, and she'd scratch your eyes out if you didn't watch out. But I'm very lucky. Most of the women in my life have been people go, how can you be with that? Well, she's so bull. No, she's not a ball buster. She's she likes to tickle them. Meaning, I always was the sweet, kind person that I can put up with this guy. Yeah, he's a little strange. Yes, there's certain things I wish he could do different, but hey, the rest of it is better than anybody else I know. So that's been my thing. But it's these eyes bounce. Since they've been growing like this, it can aggravate some people, and there's not much I can do about it. You know, Jamie, you're just so esoteric. It's like, what the heck is 10 watching? And what is that little rectangle with the X in it? What does that mean? I have no idea. I'm not an emoji guy. No one's given me, the instruction booklet for emojis. Is it better if she's smarter than you, partner? Well, it doesn't. I mean, I've had loads of women who are smarter than me. That's for sure, and they've always lifted my intelligence up. So it's a good thing. Yep. It's long. I've been very blessed with being, as I basically said, innocent. I'm an innocent, lucky bastard, right? That's, my genetic typing, And so I've been very trusting and humble and just happy to be here. So I never had anything to prove because I never knew what to prove or what I had to prove or did I have to prove anything. And when I found an interesting woman or man, but I'm pretty much drawn to women, but I would be wow. And most of those women scared most men because they were that smart, that powerful, that everything. And I would just say, "Wow, that's you're so cool. This tell me more. Show me everything. And I would be smart at. I was a smart enough monkey to kind of know what they were talking about. So it wasn't like I was duh, but oh yeah. And then I would always have some kind of little point of view that I would just say, "What do you think of this?" And they would go, "That's it." And the light bulb would go over their head, and I had two girlfriends who were like beyond Albert Einstein. One was a geneticist, and the other was brilliant at everything. She had like seven PhDs, and I kept doing things like that. And I took her out dancing. No one thought a woman like that would want to dance. She loved to dance. I would cook for her. She loved my cooking. I would take her on a vacation, and she was such a workaholic. She never went on vacation until I said, "We got to go on a vacation." And we went on. You mean I can just read a book and write stuff in my. She's the one who gave me composition books. Write things down. You got to write everything down or you forget it. She was right. And and she just loved the fact. And I get you guys to go into dreaming. She was always there. She was like an Aborigines. So she was like so out there that and so brilliant. And the corporate structure knew this. So this girl, you've all seen this woman. Um, you've seen the Pixar movies, right? Right, and that little lamp is their logo. Well, when she was at Cal State, no, she was at what's the one, the California real famous engineering everything college starts, Stanford. She was at Stanford, getting her PhD at Stanford, and she was the first human being to render three dimensions in a digital foray. She invented that algorithm. And virtually all computer graphics are based on that algorithm. And she was one of the originators of Pixar's. And then, she was the only woman. She was the smartest one. Everyone was scared. And so they kind of bought her out. So she got a nice check for that. And the people at Stanford gave her another little gig to do. And she, again, broke the bank on breaking through. She could program like 10 things at once. She she went on to work for GE, and she built their whole platform, their whole digital platform that they still use today. And so I was at a conference, right? And so we're at a cocktail party at this conference, and I'm wearing my pajamas, and everyone else is like being so scholarly and so anal retentive and all that, and she's just kind of wearing very nice because she's got money. So she's wearing very nice clothes. I mean, I got all my clothes pretty much out of the garbage, and she's kind of leaning, um, at, on this wall, and she's looking at everybody like with this look of, why am I here? And I was feeling that same way, and it was in this really fancy, schmancy place on Central Park South, and it was like up on the 10th floor. I had a big balcony. Nobody's on it. It's a beautiful summer evening, and nobody's on the balcony. And I say to her, I have a cocktail, two of them. And I hand her, "What you want to drink?" She goes, "Oh, this is nice. What's this?" And I go, "Oh, it's a Manhattan. This is my mother. I'm drinking this, and they were making them over there, and my mom used to like to drink them, and so I thought you'd like one." And she goes, "Oh, thank you very much." And I said, "Do you smoke marijuana?" And she goes, "Oh, every now and then. I kind of like it." but I don't really smoke it. And I said, same here, but I do have, and I pulled it out of my pocket, one of these. And she goes, well, let's go out on that, right? We went out there, we smoked, and we didn't even smoke the whole thing. Between us, we smoked about half. And then we started talking and talking and talking and went out. And I kind of put it back in my pocket. And I said, so you want to blow this pop stand? She goes, what do you mean by that? I said, go someplace where it's more interesting. And she goes, yeah, let's go. So we went down, and we were really not that far from what was known as the Tunnel Club. And instead of getting a cab, it was a beautiful summer evening. We both had nice walking shoes. So we walked about 25 blocks. And she just loved talking to me and me talking to her. And we'd stop, and I knew a lot of little bars and restaurants and things on our little path. And we would just go there and not have a big meal or anything. I knew this tapas place. We went in there, had a really nice glass of wine and a few little plates of this and that. And then we walked further down, and then there was a Polish restaurant, like in the, a worker thing, but and we went in there and had some blintzes, sour cream blintzes, and then we hit the Tunnel Club. And I had wired that. So I could, there's a big long line, and she goes, where are we going? I said, we're going in there. Don't we have to wait on it? No, come on. And I walked right, the guy with the rope, he just opened, hey, Al, how you doing? Here, go on in. We went in, went and danced up the night, and that was it. We're, sweeties, buddies, comrades, and it was like living on someone's couch. And she goes, I got this new apartment. You want to see it? And I said, sure. That night. So went back to her thing, and I pretty much for 6 months never left that apartment. I would leave it to go to work. And I had a car, and she liked that too, because I used to drive her to, her office was in, the NBC building, well, it was the GE building, the Chrysler building, or the Rockefeller Center, or whatever you want to call that. No, Rockefeller Center. And I was the first, and I think only non-employee of GE to get a, a pass, a like card with my picture and, an ID to get in there, because every time she came down to get me at security, she would be away from her terminals for 15, 20 minutes, and GE would lose $15,000. So her boss, Tom Alfieri, said one day, he was head of news, he said, Al, we're going to put you on the payroll, and we're going to give you this. And I said, well, pull me on the payroll to do what? And she goes, well, to be Christine's, boyfriend. I said, what? Oh, yeah. You've increased her productivity, and she gets along with everyone better, and she just needs a guy like you. I said, well, you can't pay me to do that. He goes, well, I can't give you this ID, and every time she comes down to get you, I said, well, just give me the ID, He said, well, just take the money. And I said, well, you can put me on the roll, but give Christine the money. But she's going to give it to a, nonprofit. But I don't really feel right about getting paid to be my girlfriend's boyfriend. And so Tom just shook his head. So I've had girlfriends, a lot of girlfriends like that. I had another girlfriend who worked for Johnson & Johnson, and she kept inventing like the cure for cancer. And she was amazingly brilliant. And they never let her get out. Every time she would invent some groundbreaking thing, she was doing it to get her PhD, and she was working so she never got her PhD, and she worked at Johnson & Johnson there in New Jersey when I was teaching at the Newark College of Engineering. I met her there. Anyway, so after a year, and it was her next sister, and her next sister, right? So she and I, and they had a really shitty father, a drunk, worked on the railroad. They had 2 sons and these 3 girls. The 3 girls were gorgeous, brilliant, and the men were morons, right? And her father used to, not be a nice guy to the girls, did really bad things that he would be put in jail for today. But in those days, because he was the father, he could do those things. Anyway, so again, this woman's, well, her name was Christine. I've had a run of brilliant Christines in my life. And, well, we've gone past 222. I'll just finish up. And so anyway, she and I, again, we had loads of fun, and I was teaching, but I was working on Broadway. I was like, being the electrician for lots of theaters, and I just got this job through Lester Polikoff, who was like, the numero uno theater designer. I was his best boy. So anyway, and one day I'll tell you the story of Newark College of Engineering. But anyway, so at one point she's getting more and more upset. And I say, "What's the problem?" And she goes, "Well, I'm still living at home because I have no money, and you know, and I'm just being, I'm a slave. I've been here now 6 years for Johnson. I should be a millionaire for all the stuff that I've done." And I said, "Okay." So I hooked her up with a friend of mine who was a really good lawyer. He's a patent lawyer, and he sued the shit out of Johnson and Johnson and got her millions of dollars. And after that, she got a really good rep, and she went off and worked at some lab, I think Bayer in Germany. And she got a really nice house and all of the above. And so she went off and had a beautiful time there. And I would go and visit her in Germany, and that was one of my European haunts. And she would also go to Amsterdam, and that's how I got into Amsterdam and got to be part of this collective that took over an abandoned dairy, and we called them the Milk Glass or the Milky Way. And it was a 200,000 square foot space that had been big industrial thing, and we theater, nightclub, restaurants, places where people. It was like what it was is where you are right now in dreamy dreamland, where you are in the land of the alternative aesthetic. That's what this place was, and it was a group of 300 artists, and we just had amazing time. And Christine had a really nice apartment right overlooking one of the water things that they have there. And the company owned it. And she kind of just from that point on, once she, got the street cred of being worth something, she just went from one great thing to another. Same with the other Christine, right? And the other Christine, her name is Christine Barton. I normally don't give out names, but she's like amazing. So if you were to go Google Christine Barton, you'll see that she has like 7, 8 PhDs, and not all in the same thing. Just like. And if you were to just do a little homework and see when she got them and what she was doing, you will see that she was at the crux of finding some of the most amazing things in science over the last 20 years. She's been the Forrest Gump of amazing scientific breakthroughs. And the other Christine, I don't know if I should give her name, I won't, but the other Christine is also that, but she's pretty much a neurobiologist, an endocrinologist, and another ologist of the bio. She's stuck with her bio thing, right? But she really got into understanding the connection between consciousness and the meat puppet, the bag of water. I mean, all the little terms I use come from. I mean, she used to call human beings bags, ugly bags of water. That was her little niche. So that Christine had another sister named Natalie, and the youngest one was Maryland, and Natalie just was the most. She was a real performer. Really could sing, dance, you name it. And like her older sister, as was an endocrinologist, Natalie was the same level of amazingness in her. And what she really was good at was being a DJ. And she was going to the University of Maryland. And when Christine went off to Europe, she said, "You have to watch after my sisters." And I said, "What do you mean watch after them?" She goes, "Well, I think you should date both of them at the same time. That might work." What? She goes, "Well, I can't leave here and go do my dream job if I think my sisters are going to be left with my father and my brothers. No, they can't." So I said, "Well, Marilyn's going off to the University of Maryland. She'll be fine." She goes, "Well, you just have to watch out for them. You have to do what you did for me for them." And I said, "Okay." So she went off to Germany, and and I already knew these girls, right? The three of us used to hang a lot, and I was teaching at the Newark College of Engineering, and the first year I was there, I built a Playboy penthouse on the top of the theater, and so I had a place to live in, but then I kind of moved. I met these old black ladies because I used to fix Hammond organs, and there's a thing called the B210, which really is an amazing. It's an electric organ that's just it was like ahead of its time, and they made it in the 40s, and no one fixed them. It all had tubes and everything, and I was into it, so I did it. And at the Fillmore East, they had one, and that's how I got into it, right? So it was like on the stage over there. It was too heavy to move, so Bob Goddard, my boss, said, "Hey, can you fix that?" I did, and I got into it. And so these old ladies had this gigantic church, and they were rocking. I mean, that church was, Pentecostal church, and it was like fun, 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 right? And so they gave me an apartment, and it had been a Masonic lodge, and I don't know what, but they had an apartment there, and they said, "If you fix the organs, you can stay there." And it was right on the line. The Portuguese section of Newark was on that side of the line. The Italian part of it was on this side of the line, and the black part was on that side of the line. And all the greatest restaurants were like in a 3-block neighborhood. So it was really, really great. And they had these like what I thought were subways, but they weren't. They were like trolley cars underground, and which is kind of what a subway is. And there was one that went right from Newark College of Engineering right to where that church Masonic Lodge was. It was pretty, and it cost a dime. So instead of walking or taking a cab 6 miles, I just go there, throw a dime in, get to work. So um, I had a place where the girls could come, and like I said, Natalie went off to Morgantown, and Maryland was another. She was a rocket scientist. She just was numbers, and she could just see all the numbers in her head. She couldn't do anything, and so I turned her on. I hadn't met Christine B yet. That was another 10 years later, but I had some friends who worked for Sperry and for other number crunching kind of things, and so I took her up to Columbia. I had a friend at Columbia, and so she was only 16, but Columbia was so gaga over her. They said, we have a high school that's part of Columbia. She can spend a few weeks there. We'll give her a high school degree, and it's like a really prestigious prep school. Then we'll put her into to college and get her through college in like a year and a half, and she'll get her. We want so push Maryland in there, but she had this thing about wanting to, not be at that college. She wanted to stay in her neighborhood where her friends were. But she said, "Yeah, I'll do that. That sounds great." So Maryland was out there, in University of West Virginia, Morgantown, and Maryland was doing this. But so she was the only of the sisters at home. So I was still teaching at New College of Engineering, and I was teaching theater arts at an engineering school. No, and so that's why I could get away with anything because I didn't do anything. I just spent the money they gave me to spend. And so the first year, I was never there. I didn't have a driver's license. I took the car they gave me and I drove to California and spent all the money they gave me. And I came back and I was given an award for running the best department in the college because I spent every nickel of my budget and I didn't have a single, there was no one there who complained about what I did. I didn't have a single black mark. Of course, I wasn't there at all, so that's why I had no single black mark. And so um, they they gave me this award. So I was kind of like, oh, well, that's cool. Next year, um, the Jersey riots happened, and Newark nearly burnt down. And so I'm trying to think of being a better, teacher at this university. Try to do something for the community. I was working for fixing the black ladies' Hammond B210s. I was living right in the middle of the neighborhood, really multicultural neighborhood. And I was trying to think how to use the access of these resources because I ran an amazing theater. And so I basically was in my office one day and I'm looking out the window and I see this ebony goddess walking up College Avenue. And there's, no college engine here and, another college, a New Jersey college has really famous sports. It starts with either an A or an S. It'll pop into my mind. And then there was Newark High School, the black high school. And so I see this ebony goddess walking up college. I'm just like, just smitten, right? So I, run down the stairs, run out the doors of the theater, and I see her going up the steps into the high school. I run right across, a block away. I run across, go up those steps, go in, and there's nobody there. But I hear a click, 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 click of her heels, and I follow the sound, and I go down to the basement, and there she is teaching a group of black students theater, and they're doing a scene from Hamlet, where the husband and the wife are going on about power. And it's like, whoa, this is great. I mean, I've been working on Broadway for 8 years now, and this is as good as any of that shit. I worked at Lincoln Center. I worked for all these theater companies. I said, oh, this woman, if she can get these kids to do this, she's pretty cool. So anyway, I'm watching this, and then the scene is over, and I start clapping. And she looks over at me, and here's this white devil, crazy guy with long hair. And she goes, how'd you get in here? I just walked in. She goes, how'd you even know to come down here? I said, well, I run the theater across the street. And she goes, you're that guy? See, I had a little, because the first year I was there, they gave me $30,000 a year just for materials to build sets. And since, and they gave me, like $3,800, $4,000 a week to hire teachers to run a theater department. But I put up a syllabus and I didn't have one student to sign up. So I went down to the bookkeeper lady and I said, so this is my budget and I have no employees. Can I pay myself all of this money? And she said, sure. And I said, she goes, do you have a checking account? Do you have a bank? And I said, no. She goes, well, I'll sign you up for the state, you know, whatever they call the state-run banks, that are nonprofit. And I said, great. And she goes, do you have a credit card? I go, no. She goes, well, sign you up for one of those. And so I had them put 4 grand a week into that account. And I had a credit card that would get paid automatically from that 4 grand. And they gave me a car and a truck. And my superior said, Al, can you drive? I could drive. He should have said, do you have a legal driver's license? I didn't. But I had this great ID because when I waited online to get my photo ID, there were all these other, doctors of this and doctors of that. The kid who was doing it, he didn't want to take out the frame and rewrite it. He just, stuck my name in, and it said Dr. DiMartino, director of Newark College Engineering Theater Department, right? And I had my little funny face and the state, logo over my face. And I drove that car from New Jersey all the way to San Francisco. And like for this, the year of love is when I kind of got there. And I went to Las Vegas, I went to New Orleans, I went to all these great places. And I had a credit card that had like 4 grand a week being put on it. And I had a car and it had the state logo on each door and the state license plate. And when you go to other cities, if you have a like, state vehicle, they don't give you parking tickets or tow your car. And I got stopped a number of times, and when they said, license and registration. I had the registration, I had my name on it, it said that I could use this car by the, it's a state vehicle, signed out to me, and I would hand them my, not my driver's license, but my college ID, and it had my little face and the state logo embossed right on top of it. It said Doctor, and they said, "Well, Doctor, just slow down now. Okay, you can go." Now today you can't get away with that shit. As soon as you hand a police officer your driver's license, you will get a summons for God knows what, but they'll give it to you, right? Because it's a scam. It's what do they call it? A protection racket. So, but not back in those days. Cops could, there was Opie and there was, this guy, but they were mostly not smart enough to be crooks. So, anyway, so I had built a Playboy grotto on top of the thing, and I had these binoculars, and I would look down into the other college, and I go scope pretty girls, and then, hey, you want to see my grotto? So I did have what a bit of a rep. So when the ebony goddess said, "Oh, you're that guy," and I said, "Hey, hey, hey, please, let's not mix orange and orange. I want to do something right here." You know. And she also heard that I was fixing the old black ladies, um, you know, you know, Hammond B210s. So she said, "Well, I hear you're not that bad of a guy." And I said, "I want to show you something." So I take her over to the theater, and it's a real theater. I mean, it has a fly. It was built by guys I work for, George and George. And I said, "This is your theater. You don't have to perform in the basement of the cafeteria anymore. I mean, this has real lights. It has a shop. I have a, this is a school to teach. And none of these moron kids want to learn this. Let's teach your kids." And I have connections in New York. I've been working there. I can get them jobs. I can get them into the union. I can, and she was just like, "Okay, okay, okay. But we're not going out. We're not, I can sense that you're a good guy and you really want to do this. Right on, brother." Right? I said, that's it. Of course, within a few weeks, we were, Kimba and Catwoman, and we were a great team. And so I went to the high school coach football guy. I said, "Listen, because she had no guys. She just had all these great women and a few gay boys who were not that bad. But she needed some guys with testosterone. And I went to the football coach and I said, listen, I need some of your football guys. For what? For the theater department. For what? Theater department. He goes, I said, just give me your backfield and I'm going to teach them to dance. He goes, what? I said, yeah, I'm going to take him to New York City. I'm going to get Carl Orff, who's a great choreographer, and he's going to teach your boys how to dance. And they will be able to dance around any other, defensive guys. They'll just be able to spin. And the guy was like, and so I actually had, I want to show you a film. And I showed him a ballet, a film from Lincoln Center. And he goes, wow, yeah, that could work. So he talked to his boys. And I said, listen, the way you have to advertise this is that you're going to have 6 guys and they're going to be around 30 gorgeous young women. Tell them that. And it'll make them better football players, and they will probably get into better colleges because they will have this well-rounded. And the guy goes, and the football coach was a really, he was thinking about the kids rather than himself. And so, he said, sure. So I was like the chief. So my office became totally African, zebra skin, a cane chair and crossed spears and shields. So we do this and we build, and I get other kids from the school interested in, because theater isn't just acting or dancing, it's also building stuff. So I got kids interested who wanted to build stuff and learn how to light things and sew costumes. And Brooks Van Horn, the biggest, most amazing costume company, I knew the guy who owned that. And I was in IATSE and NABIS, which are the 2 unions for theater, right, and film. So I got all those kids into apprentice programs for that and into colleges. Anyway, so that first year we did all this and we built Shakespeare's Globe Theater. I finally did use the shop and actually built sets, but it was with high school kids rather than the college kids. Anyway, we did this and we got written up in the New York Times and it was like amazing. And the governor came and I got an award because the year before Newark nearly burned down and I got an award for the greatest racial harmony guy. And the woman who was teaching high school, I got her to be the director of the Newark, instead of me, right? So I'm just a technical guy. You need somebody like her who's like, director, right? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, I could do that too, but I wanted her to get that job. And I said, this is how I want it to work. I want this facility to be connected to that high school. And that if kids from the college are doing this, the high school kids, and it'll be a nice, and so the governor, Brendan Burns was his name, was like, he couldn't believe that, when did you thought this up? Yeah. And I wrote it out as a proposal, blah, 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 because I'm a strategist, right? And he says, this is great. So I got this award. She and I got this award, the best racial teachers in the state of New Jersey, right? So I'm on, I can do no wrong. The mayor, everybody's like, and I'm only 24 years old. My career, could have been. But on the other side of the coin, this was an engineering school, and all those pinheads with white shirts and, they were like, what are they doing to our school? All these black people are here, right? It was a engineering school right in the middle of this black everything, and they were like, don't, big fence, the whole thing. So what happens is I'm like on top of the world. Like I said, I'm Kunta Kinte. I've got, Christine in Germany and Maryland and out there in University of West Virginia, Morgantown, and Maryland is there. But she's still, I'm having to go and make sure that her brothers and her father aren't screwing with her. Anyway, one day, and I literally mean screwing with her. And one day she comes, she goes, "Can I live with you?" I said, "What about your family? And I mean, you should be living, at Columbia. They said they'd get you a place." And she goes, "Well," and first I get a call from the guy at Columbia saying something's wrong with Madeline. And then Madeline says, "I need to get out of the house." But she's still like 16. She's even though she's going to college and she's on her way to get her PhD, she's still under the thumb of her father. So and the school is giving her money, but her father's making the school give the money to him, and he's not working anymore. And anyway. So me and my brothers of the football team, we go and visit those boys. Maryland is now staying with my black co-creator, and they kind of get along. They like that, and and my ebony goddess is like trying to understand because Maryland's telling the relationship that I have with Christine, Maryland, and her, and my ebony goddess is kind of she tried to wrap her little head around it. She goes, "But he's always with me." And she goes, "Oh no, it's not like that. It's just like that." And I'm only 16, so he's not doing that. But he loves me dearly, and he's always taken care of me, and he's made my life. He's all my sisters. It's like it's us and him, and my ebony goddess is kind of. But she really kind of loves Marilyn because Marilyn was somebody, she was just so innocent and sweet. Anyway, so I show up and the father and the brothers know me. It's now been 3 years that I've been involved in that family, and I've totally wrecked their, male-oriented, misogynist world because those girls were there to serve them, and I kind of changed that. And so the guy goes, "Where's Marilyn?" And she's never come. "I'm her father." "Yeah, you should be in jail. Anyway, so and then I'm at the door, and the black guys are kind of in the car, and I'm gonna go up to talk. And then he gets a little threatening. And I don't say anything, but all of a sudden, there are 8 big black young men right there with baseball bats, right? And we just kind of wash into their house. And the 2 brothers are kind of drunk, so "Oh, you nigger, nigger." And that was it. I just kind of stepped back, and those boys took those 3 guys apart. I just kept saying, "Now, don't kill them. And try not to break anything." And when they were like, lying on the floor, going in all different directions, and in ways their body parts weren't designed to go that way, I said, "From this point on, if you do anything to harm, interfere, or get in the way of the happiness of those 3 women that I care a great deal about, we'll be back." And and I had already gotten this big award by the governor. I said, "If you even think about going to those chucklehead cops, you boys will be in jail, not me or these guys. We were never here." Turned around, walked away. And Maryland and you know Christine and Natalie's life, they went in a positive direction. And for another 4 or 5 years, like we had Valentine's was our holiday, the 3 of us, right? And we would twice we went to Germany to stay with Christine. And Christine, after Marilyn got her PhD at age 19, Christine got her a job in Germany, and they stayed together. So that's what I think of women. Women are superior to men, right? And men are should be serving women, and that's how our culture. We need to bring that out into this new aesthetic, and not Me Too. Me Too is like too. You want to be like a misogynist moron. Like you want to be Me Too. I want to be like them. No, 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 no. I'm sorry. Why are men misogynists? Because mothers they teach their boys to do that. For some reason, this has all got turned around. You look back in the ancient tribes, women were the superiors. They ruled. You look at Egypt. Yeah, there was a pharaoh, but the girls were above the pharaoh. And I mean, we have to redevelop a new aesthetic, not based, not try to copy the old. No, we need something that we can use to step up to, right? And violence is never the way. I mean, it's 24 years old. I was very irritated that my really sweetest person, one of Maryland, who was really near and dear to my heart, was being treated like this, and that I didn't. The only thing I could do was change the girls' lives so they could move away from that, because they were kind of stuck in to that misogyny. They had been. It was hurting them. It made them miserable, but they thought that's what it was, right? So how the story ends? It's now 3 hours and 6 minutes, 33 seconds. So how the story ends is man, I could have been the mayor. I could have. I mean, I was like just getting myself into that thing, but so those guys couldn't do anything, but they didn't like me. And their friends, we don't like this guy. And that whole neck of the woods was a very small town for being a city. And so my biggest constituency was black and poor people and powerful politicians who wanted the black and poor people to vote for them. So it was a very strange situation. So I have a tendency to again, it's these eyebrows. I don't think about it. I'm not saying, oh, I'm the coolest guy. Oh, my grandma said, whenever you walk in a room, you own it. And I kind of have that little genetic thing that I got from my grandma. But anyway, so I'm in my office in the theater, and the boys are, once these guys, hey, hang with me. We go to unbelievable nightclubs, all kinds of stuff in New York. They're being, wined and dined by colleges to be their football player because they're smart and they do theater and this is going to look great. This is the '70s. Things are changing a bit. What's up with what's her name? Columbia. It's all over America. Well, you know what Columbia is? I tell you what Columbia is. It's the goddess of racism. Yep. It goes all the way back to the Greeks. It's about owning people. That's what Columbia all over the country is about. It's about we're fucking slaves. And again, Columbus, slavery. What did he write in his little journal? First thing, oh, these natives are great. They pulled out of the drink. We would have been dead. They healed us. They saved us. They shared everything with them. They're generous. They're beautiful. They're smart. They're really strong. They'll make great slaves. It's about slavery. Follow the yellow brick road. Yes, that's right, kid. It's all about the money, about the gold. So anyway, I'm in my office, and the brothers are with me, and I'm wearing my black sunglasses and my black beret and my leather jacket, and I'm being Huey Newton. And this guy in a Madras sports jacket comes in. He's got this white shirt, and a little bow tie, this little nerdy guy, and he starts, what are all these niggers doing here? Oh, and he's just like, I'm like, what? And I got my little, plaque up there from Brendan Byrne saying, racial harmony. And I said, excuse me, come on, this is, and he goes, and what do I hear about? This is going to be connected to the high school, and that nigger lady's going to run it, and not in, right? And I'm just like, and I look at the guys and I go, why don't you show them the door? So they pick this guy up and they carry him out to the parking lot, and they, do the same thing without the baseball bats that they did to those other three racist, misogynist males. Anyway, so they come back and they're like, okay, that's done. So, we're talking about maybe the next show or what they're going to do or what college they're going to go to, da, 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 da. And then my phone rings. And I pick it up, and it's my superior. Al, you need to come to my office. Okay. So I come to the office, and he goes, Al, and the guy with the mattress coat, and he's like, kind of been crumpled and torn and spindled, and but he's still alive, and there's nothing really that wrong with him. And he goes to me, Al, you've done a lot here in the short time you've been here, but it's time for you to go. I said, what are you talking about? It's like, what are you talking about, Willis? He goes, the guy right here. I said, he should be arrested. You know what he said? Yes, yes, yes. But you know who he is? And I go, no. He is the new dean of the college. I said, oh, but still, you know what he says? Yes, yes, yes. So no one is going to be charged with anything, right? And your friend from the high school, she's still going to run that theater and still going to be just the way you wanted it. You just have to leave. And I said, well, because I was already doing a zillion things in New York and all over the place. So it wasn't like I didn't have something else to do. And he goes, and, you're going to go to see Janet in disposition, and there's a check waiting for you for all the fine business you've done here and how much we appreciate what you've done, but you got to go. I said, okay. And so I went down to Janet, and they gave me a very nice check, So I said, mm-hmm. And I used to get a Christmas card from Brendan Burns every year until he died, And I still had some pretty good connection in the legislature in New Jersey. But I turned them all over to my ebony goddess. And she and I stayed best of buddies, and then she got married and became a god. I have 127 godchildren. I have no children of my own, but I have 127 godchildren. And her two boys are my godsons. And the beauty of being a godfather is you can have you can be just like dad, but you're not. So you can go home. You don't have to pay the bills. You can help them out. You can get them nice presents. You can take them places. You can show them things. You can teach them things. You can have the same kind of great relationship, but you don't have to be dad. And you don't get blamed. You're always cool, until they get old. My sister has some boys, and I used to really show them a good time. I could get them into any nightclub. They'd come and visit me in New York, and they'd have a good time. But once they got married and had kids, one of them said to me, you can't do any of the stuff you did with me with my boys. I said, what are you talking about? Look, you turned out okay. Didn't you have fun? No, 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 but I don't want them exposed to that. Oh, you don't want them exposed to culture and to deep thoughts and to lots of different people. That's right. I don't want them exposed to any of that. Because you got scared, and that's the problem. People get scared. Oh, that was a night. It was 13, 14, 13. And so, anyway, so that's enough stories for the night. Let's let's see, rather than negating that which could be negated, affirm that which is affirmed. Exactly. That's why the Statue of Liberty is modeled after her. That's right. Too many shandies. Why people turn out all disoriented. Exactly. And that's the powers that be. They support negative lifestyles. I mean, look at the food people, it's everything you can smoke, you can drink. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't, but you shouldn't be motivated to smoke and drink. Um, like if marijuana was legal, we wouldn't have an opiate addiction, you know? Um, like I take CBG oil for my ruined joints, really does the job. And back when I was an herbalist, I used lots of I mean, we're talking about in the 70s. I made loads of tinctures of all kinds of things that were, oh, you can't use that. But, oh, well, you can have heroin, but or morphine or any opiate or any of this. By the way, you could have steroids. The doctors put my mom on steroids for 10 years long. No, I mean, if you have an inflammation, a steroid is not bad for a couple of days, but not for years. I mean, they wanted to put me on all kinds of crap, and I said, no, 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 sorry. Now, I do take a thing for my diabetes and my neuropathy, and I do take a thing for my blood pressure, but I've changed my diet, and I've lost all that weight, and I've done a whole bunch of other things, so I take a tenth of what they want me to take. and and I ease myself up, and I look at my blood sugar and my other things that I can measure myself, and I can see that I'm getting better and better. I keep moving in that direction, just like I keep losing weight. But I'm not losing 20 pounds, losing a pound here and a pound here, and as long as I lose pound here and a pound here instead of gaining a pound here and here, it's all about direction, all about navigation. And the powers that be want the sheeple, the 6.9 billion people, to be on the path of self-destruction, you know? And so, and they wonder why people turn out so, yep, higher education. Oh, education does the job. Yeah, I was very lucky. I mean, I'm super educated. I got more degrees than the thermometer, but I didn't matriculate. A number of people go, oh, where's your degree? Why don't you have it up on the wall? I said, because it's not important. What? And I said, well, I got, I tell them the way I got it. I studied with X, Y, and Z professor, and they said, oh, you earned it, you know. But you didn't go to a 4-year college. I said, no, I went to a 30-year college. I went to 20 different universities. Well, that's not worth anything unless you've matriculated and have a degree. So I have degrees. Where are they? I said, well, they're not important. They're in some box someplace. You know, and that's the problem. People value status, artificial status that's worthless. You know, because it's been set there by the powers that be. Okay. Yep, C60. I've been taking that. One of you sent me a bottle of it, and I thank. And I have to thank you all. You've all given me a great deal. And as my teachers would always say, I can't charge for this, but I can take a gratuity. So you've sent me so many nice Christmas little packages and gifts, and if you want to send something to me through Western Union, you can. And just Al Martino, and then go to the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail and give me the routing number. Um, a number of you have done that, and that's really, really helped because really I am, you know, a homeless, penniless scholar. And that's kind of what Socrates, Plato, they all are because you really, I have to tell you this. I pretty much lost everything materially I have, right? Um, all of the things I have are in other people's names; they're not in mine, and and there's a real freedom of not having anything. I don't worry about anything. I don't worry about paying my bills because I don't buy anything. I don't spend money. An expense will come up here or there, or if I want to buy some vegetables. But, I don't buy anything on Amazon. I don't really buy any big ticket items like I used to. I don't spend that kind of money. No, simulation of the ADP and yep. Woo. Mitochondrial stimulation of the ADP to the yep, that whole mechanism. And the other thing are our glands. The vagus nerve is really important. That's why cranial sacral is really a great technique. And sprout salads, yes, I'm gonna right. It's hard to sprout things when you're a homeless guy. But I'm back when get this summer, spring. I'm gonna definitely start because I was eating all of that out of the forest. The big green is like a big, salad bowl. It's all grown in the forest. Cheap. Of course, Jamie. You know, I've been, the aesthetic adept most of my life. I used to have a little sprout business in New York. I'd grow them in 5-gallon joint compound buckets after you clean them out and put screen on the top of the rubber band. And all you do is throw the seeds in there, put some water in, slosh it around, pour the water out. Next morning, put some water in, slosh it around, pour it out. By the fourth day, that 5-gallon bucket is full of 5 gallons of sprouts. It's pretty amazing. So yes, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of growing everything, right? And or living in the woods and eating it out of the woods. But pretty much nothing better because we're hunter and gatherers, and all the hunter gatherer people I've lived with, they don't go shoot tigers, lions, and bears. No, the hunting they get is mostly insects, grubs. Grubs are really good, especially if you don't know you're eating them. Meaning, I live with this Aboriginal tribe, and the thing I love best, they would bring this wooden kind of bowl, and it would have like pork rinds covered in chocolate and sprinkles, and I'm just, and it was really good for me, right? A lot of protein. But I had no idea. I thought they were pork rinds covered in chocolate. And I would say, where'd you get this stuff? What? And so I bugged him so much about it. One day, the guy, you want to see what this stuff is? I said, sure. So we go over to a tree. He rips the bark off, and that's the wooden bowl. And in the bark are all these grubs, And he picks up a rock, and he hits them, mushes them up, and all the blood and feces come out of them. And the blood is the chocolate sauce, and the feces is the sprinkles. And he goes, that's what you eat every day. That's what you love so much. And I couldn't eat them after that. So from that point on, and living out in the middle of the desert, 900 miles to the closest white person, and a refrigerator, there's, it's hunting and gathering, and that's the hunting that they went after, and the gathering was, the little plants and sprouts and things that grew by the side of the stream, right? So after that, I never asked what it was, and they'd always kind of kid me by go, "How's it taste, Al?" And I go, "Tastes like chicken," and they'd all laugh. So okay, 3 hours, 24 minutes, and 20 seconds. So we'll try for 3 hours, 33 minutes and 33 seconds. We'll see how that works. Winter in Canada, larva are delicious. Yep. See? Jamie knows. Protein fixes are good too. Yep. Nothing better. Yep. And, that picture, go back to look at some. That bunch was, their whole tribe was wiped out by white guys, just shooting them in the head in the 1960s. They found gold, uranium, titanium, cobalt on the desert. And so instead of making a deal with them and said, oh, we'll put you up in this nice place over there, they just went and shot everybody in the head. And the 9 people that you saw in that picture were out there gathering stuff so they didn't get shot in the head. And were they pissed off about the white people, about them losing their land? Well, it wasn't their land, and they didn't lose it. And yeah, and they actually felt sorry for the white people. They felt sorry for the white people who shot their tribe in the head, because their tribe wasn't them. Their tribe had just moved on into Dreamtime. And you didn't have to take any drugs to see these guys in Dreamtime. All you had to do was, so most people think Australia is a desert, but it's not. It rains like you can't believe. They have this rainy season where they have these monsoons that just march across Australia. And back in the day before the white people showed up, they had about 16 feet of black, unbelievable topsoil. They could have fed the world out of Australia, right? Still is one of the larger grain producers. But they brought cows and sheep to Australia that would eat the grass to the roots, and then when the monsoons would come, there were no roots there to hold the topsoil down. So after 125 years, it basically looks like a desert out there in the Northern Territory. But it below that 16 feet was this kind of very interesting. I don't even know what kind of rock it is. It's not pumice. It's not granite. It's a very interesting stuff. And you might have seen people in Australia who live out in the desert in these caves. And they're not caves per se. What they are is when the monsoon comes, it eats these kind of, and they're not even canyons because they're like slivers. The sliver you see in the tree of life that goes down to the land, the back door, right, which you have to use your telescope eye. It's a sliver like that, and it kind of goes for miles, and it's where the stream and the river. And so even though it looks like it's a desert, there's loads of water underneath it, right? And so the tribe would go down when it got really hot. They would go down there and camp out over under these ledges, and there was like a beach, and it would be cool and sandy, and the mosquitoes wouldn't come down there; they would be up there, and so it was cool, less buggy, less. There's some really nasty spiders and snakes in the outback. There's about 9 things that if they bite you, you're dead in 10 seconds, and if you're 900 miles from the nearest white person. So the 2 things you do when you're out there, you don't eat any white people feed. You eat that raw food that you pick, because then your blood changes and the insects don't want to bite you. If you're drinking Coca-Cola, they want to bite you, and all those things that want to kill you, they can smell that and they come straight for you. But if you're eating the grubs and the tumors in the soft ground, they're not after you. So we would go down there and camp down there when it was really hot. But there were certain times of the year when it wasn't. It was hotter than here now, but it was in the 70s, 80s, and there was always a little breeze. Just before the monsoons for about a month, it was perfect. It was like not too hot. There were some clouds, so you had a little shade, and there's always this nice little breeze. But so the monsoon season, we would go up to the higher grounds, which also had these nice little craggy things when the water went down. Anyway, all you had to do is fit in with nature. And that's what these people did the best. you know. So that's where we're at. We're at here to develop a new aesthetic. The Outback, kill you. It's a state of mind. It is. It won't kill you. It'll love you if you're in the right state of mind. If you're in an Aussie state of mind, yeah, it'll eat you alive. You know, it was amazing. Meaning, when I first got there and I was, just got off the bus and I was eating a cheeseburger and a Coke, I was covered in insects. And then they said, "Here, eat this." I ate that, and after a little while, I was, in balance, and no bugs ate me. So that's the aesthetic we have to go for, the balanced aesthetic, right? Because our culture of the corporate world is so out of balance, so and that's. Have you guys seen the movie They Live by Carpenter? Go see that. That's where we are 100%. That's where we are now. That's what's going on. And we have to develop a new aesthetic to that. So, see you in the morning for all you guys who are in the right time frame, because there's quite a few of you guys. Almost as many hit the morning show as the night show. Because, like I said, you guys are all over the planet on so many different time zones. So, Joel, have a nice New Year's and a New Year's Day. I had a very nice one. It was good talking to you guys, And I want you to always be happy. Practice going to state, going to all these back doors through the crevice in the tree of life. Communicate with each other. I'm sure you've shared your little emails addresses and you are talking out, not just when we're here on chat. See you later, Mr. Tony. Tony. We're getting close to 33333. That's where I'm signing off. And I feel really good about what we've done in 2018. And I feel really excited about what we're going to do in 2019. Dig it, Uncle Fugnuts. Dig it. And it's 3 minutes, 32 seconds. No, 3 hours, 32 minutes, and 22 seconds. Counting down towards 33333. So I hope you enjoyed the bubble universe, and I love you all. And it's been a great night, a great day, great New Year's, and it's going to be a great 2018. We have great opportunities with the state of everything. We can own it. Okay, here it is: 3330304, and mucho amor. Sounds like a song. Mucho amor. Anyway, 33318. So enjoy tomorrow. Those who are going to sleep, sweet dreams. I'll see you in dreamy land. Those who are not, here it is: 30. 1, 2, 3. Come on. Sweet dreams, gang. Talk to you later.